What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 7SW Chapter 181 The Eighth Gate. Open. What is the most exciting battle? Is it a powerful and invincible crush, destroying the enemy with one punch? Is it that the weak overcome the strong and fight across the ranks to be happy and hearty? Or, the two sides are evenly matched, all-round competition of body strength, combat experience, reaction, and spiritual will? The joy of punching to the flesh, the cruelty of both you and me bleeding, and the thrill of being faced with a life and death crisis every second. Sliding down the abyss where the ice cubes cracked, Jang L landed heavily on the bottom. His mind was chaotic, and his mind emerged. Aokiji's strength is really terrifying. The frozen ice surface seems to have directly touched the bottom of the sea, reaching a depth of thousands of meters. Ha 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 ha. Suddenly, Jang L laughed. This is a smile from the heart, and only fighting against a world-class powerhouse like Whitebeard can make him feel excited. Pity. If you were 10 years younger, that will definitely be more exciting. Muttering, Jang L's body moved slightly, wrapped in fruitability. His state recovered again, and he looked up. Marineford, Inner Bay Ice. The cold wind blew past, and the battlefield at the moment seemed quiet. Come on, are you kidding me? Jang L Admiral was thrown into the abyss? Did you lose? Did Jang L Admiral lose like that? Countless Marines said with trembling voices, swallowing in fear. Looking at the figure standing like a mountain, the Marines couldn't control it, and a sense of awe and fear rose in their hearts. At the edge of the abyss, Whitebeard's eyes were solemn, looking ahead. Hoo-hoo. The breathing became heavier at this time. The battle with Jang L, the physical consumption and the burden on the body, were all enormous. Especially if he wants to temporarily suppress the opponent, he needs to do everything he can to use the strongest power. Time. Speaking softly, Whitebeard took a deep breath, his face dignified. Yes, time is his worst enemy. Whether it's this aging body with a lot of dark injuries, or the sun on the execution stand in front of him, he has to race against time to save him. After looking down at the bottomless ice abyss, Whitebeard jumped up suddenly. Boom! The huge body fell into the center of the battlefield. Then, looking at the dense enemy in front of him, he took a deep breath and raised Kong Yunkyut in his hand. Children, rescue Ace with me. Seeing their father entering the field, the pirates were all excited at this moment. Their morale was boosted, and they raised their weapons and rushed forward bravely. Kill. Rescue Ace. In the battlefield, the screams of killing were deafening again. Advertisement, call. Whitebeard took a deep breath, held the knife in both hands, and looked at the Marines ahead. Suddenly, he swung his knife up. Buzz! The air trembled, and the slash slammed into the crowd. With a bang, hundreds of Marines were sent flying into the sky and screamed. This shocking scene made countless people tremble. Whitebeard's attack was too destructive. Hundreds of battles Marine elite, the lowest as a school-level officer, actually in front of the opponent, like the grass being mowed, without the ability to resist. Stop him! So many people, so many troops, even if it is exhausted, he will be exhausted to death. The general-level officers were imposing, but they were still fierce and roared loudly. They are very clear about the meaning of this war, and the key to victory is naturally the man in front of him. Is Jang L Admiral really gone? But in the battlefield, there are still voices of despair. Jang L Admiral, who defeated Pluton Rayleigh, has undoubtedly become an idol, belief, and even spiritual pillar in the hearts of many soldiers. But as the other party fell into the bottomless ice abyss, their faith also collapsed. Shut up, lousy. With or without him, this fight has to go on. Pick up your spirits for me, soon. Someone slapped the heads of those who had lost their fighting spirit and shouted loudly. Then, staring at Whitebeard in front of them, they took a few deep breaths and clenched their weapons. Rush for lousy. The overwhelming Marine, at this moment, charged towards the figure of Whitebeard in front of him. Kill. For justice. For justice. At this moment, a neat slogan resounded in the sky of Marineford. Marine surged forward like an ant. Get out of here. Whitebeard's roar sounded quickly, and the Naginata knife Kong Yunchu suddenly waved. Ah! The shockwave swept through, and hundreds of people flew into the sky and danced towards the rear. Rescue Ace. The 6.6-meter body slammed like an iron tower. Under the leadership of Whitebeard, Marco and others roared loudly and rushed forward quickly. Seeing this scene, Ace's expression changed, and light flashed in his eyes. You don't really have any illusions about escaping here, do you, Ace? Sengoku noticed it and said in a deep voice. Ace was silent and did not respond. You don't know your father's physical condition, and you don't know anything about your uncle's strength. Sengoku said lightly. What's the meaning? Advertisement. Ace heard the words, raised his head and asked loudly. Jang L, you are far from using your full strength. Raising his head, Sengoku looked at the ice abyss. When he appears on the battlefield again, you can see his true strength. After a pause, Sengoku's tone was suddenly filled with complicated emotions. There is awe, and a trace of regret. That's a terrifying power to fight Roger. Ace was shocked, his eyes fixed on where Bing Yuan was. The cold wind was blowing, and nothing was seen, only ice chips were swirling in the wind. Jang L seemed to have been punched into the abyss by his father and disappeared. Whitebeard entered the battlefield at this time, fighting with all his strength, dashing forward. Sengoku's voice entered his ears. It is precisely because he deeply knows how terrible Jang L is that he wants to let his sons, the pirates, make a further breakthrough here before that, in order to increase the chances of saving you. The tone of admiration mixed with the dullness caused Ace's pupils to shrink, and then he stared at the old man who was facing the besieged by a dozen general-level officers in the field. Dad. What? In the battlefield, Whitebeard shouted loudly, holding Kong Yunki in his right hand and waving out. The general-level officer who came up, spurted blood in an instant, his bones and muscles were shattered, and he flew out backwards. Immediately afterwards, Whitebeard swung his left fist forward again. Crack. A few hundred meters ahead, the ice surface shattered, and a large swath of marine was shaken into the sky, screaming in agony. The Whitebeard Pirates are about to break through the inner bay and enter the port. As long as they rush through that gate, they will be very close to the execution platform. A nervous shout rang out. Akainu, who had been sitting on the chair, looked down and frowned. Suddenly, he stood up and threw his right fist out. The hot magma spread toward the void ahead in the blink of an eye, outlining the shape of a huge fist like a meteorite. Then, call out. A harsh whistling sound came out, and the meteorite magma fist rushed towards Whitebeard. Dad. A pirate warned loudly. Whitebeard, who had just been flying to attack the pirates, panted slightly, looked up at the magma fist above his head and suddenly grinned. Boy, you magma, you only deserve some birthday candles. Its long sword was raised, and it shook towards the sky. The magma fist suddenly shattered, turning into countless sparks and falling down. At the same time, under the ice abyss, Jang L raised his head slowly, the light in his eyes flickered, and his whole body shook with energy. The blue mist turned into a deep red blood mist the next moment. The eighth gate, the dead gate, open, chapter 182 Sudden Reinforcements. Kill. The screams of killing resounded through the sky, and the bright red blood gushed out of the body at all times, spilling on the cold ice surface. The temperature over Marineford has dropped below freezing due to extensive freezing, but the air is full of scorching emotions. One of the four emperors, the Whitebeard Pirates, is roaring and charging forward bravely towards the harbor. In order to rescue the 2nd Division Captain, Fire Fist Ace, and also for the Whitebeard Pirates, the glory that exists in this world. No one can survive in this world safe and sound after offending them. This is the glory of the Whitebeard Pirates. Buzz. The void trembled, terrifying shockwaves radiated forward, and the harbor made of countless hard granites was shaken by countless cracks in an instant. Rush in and rescue Ace. Children. Whitebeard's tall body stood in the center of the battlefield, and he was so majestic that no one could stop him from advancing. Around it, there are pirates with crazy faces and excitedly rushing forward. With such an old man plundering the formation, their charge will undoubtedly become easier. In just a few minutes, the Whitebeard Pirates, led by Marco, stepped onto Marineford's inner bay port. Come on, we're only one step away from the execution platform. Oz, rush to open the city gate, rescue Ace, take Marineford. Dad is invincible. Excited shouts resounded in the sky above Marineford, and the pirates ripped open the defense of naval headquarters. In such a large-scale operation, being torn open means that the situation of the war is changing. It's not good, Garp, Crane Vice Admiral said in a deep voice. Her eyes were fixed on the center of the battlefield, and the massive body of Whitebeard with the crescent-shaped lip above her lip frowned. Yes, Garp whispered, his eyes twinkling. At this moment, the Marine hero's mood, even he did not know how it was. Contradictory, yet complex. Standing in the Marine camp, he naturally didn't want the Whitebeard Pirates to succeed, but standing in the position of his relatives, he hoped that Ace could be rescued. What the hell is Jang L doing? Didn't he say he would save Ace? But until now, I haven't seen any action from him. Muttering in his heart, Garp clenched his fists subconsciously. On the execution platform, Sengoku also looked down with a solemn expression. Jang L, what are you doing? He muttered, his heart heavy. Advertisement. The overall momentum of the enemy that Whitebeard participated in was completely different from the previous one. Every pirate seemed to have been beaten with blood, desperately charging towards it. Suddenly, a loud cry came from the battlefield. Sengoku looked up and saw a warship and dozens of figures, screaming and falling from the frozen waves. Who is it? His face became ugly, and Sengoku's eyes were fixed on the group. Ace. Soon, a loud cry was transmitted to hear along the air. Road, Luffy. Hearing this familiar voice, Ace raised his head suddenly, staring at the falling figure in shock. Luffy? Sengoku was startled for a moment, then quickly reacted, his face instantly turned extremely ugly. His eyes looked down, and he immediately stared at Garp who was holding his hands below. Damn, Sabo de Archipelago, didn't he escape? Why are you coming again? Sengoku growled angrily. An Ace has made this battle too many variables. Add another monkey D Luffy, and even he doesn't know what's next. Road, Luffy? At this moment, Garp also opened his mouth wide, and his eyes almost popped out. Then there is panic, fear, worry, rising from the heart. What kind of war is this? The countless powerhouses who have gathered on the world and stand at the peak, even the elite of the school level, are only looking to meet the qualifications to participate in this war. With Luffy's strength, he is too young to participate in this war, and he will most likely die here. Why are you here? Ah! Garp yelled in horror, almost rushing to the battlefield. Garp, calm down. Crane on the side also frowned, staring at the Straw Hat Boy who just fell not far from Whitebeard. A hint of helplessness flashed on his face. Him, Luffy. Garp pointed forward, wailing loudly. I know, calm down, you old guy. The crane was speechless, jumped up suddenly, and punched the other party's head fiercely. Standing under the execution stand, Akainu, who was in front of the chair, stared at the figure in the straw hat in the field. His eyes were cold. The scum of the world is gathered here. On the other side, Aokiji slowly let out a cold breath, his eyes also staring at Luffy. Allah, here comes a guy with a headache. This trouble naturally does not refer to the strength of the Straw Hat Boy, but to the background behind him. Advertisement. It's just the relationship between Garp's pro-grandson that he can't really start. Monkey D. Luffy. Kizaru, whose body was flashing with golden light, also blinked at this moment, and an unintelligible smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Many people on the battlefield were flustered because of this Straw Hat Boy who suddenly arrived. Kura-la-la-la. Staring at the Straw Hat Boy who just appeared not far in front of him, Whitebeard laughed. Your straw hat looks quite familiar, you stinky brat. His eyes swept away, and he was staring at the red-nosed man on the other side. And you, is Roger the red nose on the boat back then? This battlefield is not for you guys. Whitebeard's tone turned cold when he said the last sentence. You're Whitebeard, aren't you? I'm Monkey D. Luffy, the man who will become One Piece in the future. Luffy pressed the hat on his head, looked up at the huge, terrifying old Whitebeard in front of him, and said in a deep voice. Hey, I hate being called Red Nose, even if you're Whitebeard. Buggy also shouted, but when the latter gave him a calm look, he immediately shivered and didn't dare to say anything. One Piece? Whitebeard's eyes fixed on Luffy, and he grinned suddenly. I will follow my own way to save Ace. The wind was blowing over Luffy, but he didn't change his expression, still staring at Whitebeard. Kong Yunki, the Naginata knife in his hand, froze suddenly, the ice surface under his feet shattered, and a violent momentum radiated out, causing a strong wind to roll up on the ice surface. I'm here to save Ace too. With a group of people, there is a little more hope of rescuing Ace, and this kid's hat and the background behind it are not simple. Then, even if John Lu appeared again and stopped in front of him. The words turned, and Whitebeard looked forward. Then follow the instructions of the old man and don't do anything without authorization. Luffy exclaimed. Hoo-hoo, I want to save my beloved son Ace. Hopefully, it will be bigger. Who wants to listen to you old guy? The corners of Whitebeard's mouth curved into an arc, and he glanced at the Bingyuan behind him invisibly. Luffy retorted without hesitation, however, the old man has no time to talk to you now. Nice momentum, Whitebeard said. Advertisement Chapter 183. The second round begins. Naval Headquarters, in Marineford. The atmosphere seemed more condensed, mixed with a trace of weirdness. In the battlefield where only the Whitebeard Pirates were originally, a strange reinforcement team suddenly appeared. At the head were Monkey D. Luffy, the red-nosed Buggy, and Ivankov, a cadre of the Revolutionary Army. This team is not small, and its scale is quite large. In addition to dozens of backbone teams, there are also thousands of people in total. If the Whitebeard Pirates are the core, and this team is added, it can pose pressure and threat to Marine. What happened to Impel Down? Aren't these guys supposed to be in Impel Down? After just a few glances, Sengoku's expression turned solemn. The sudden addition of this team, most of them, can be said to be wearing new prison uniforms, and they are clearly arrested criminals. What happened to Impel Down? Soon, Sengoku reacted and asked loudly at the phone bug. Headed by the Straw Hat Boy, Ivankov, and the Clown Buggy, they made a big noise of Impel Down and released many criminals. In addition, we just got the news that the Blackbeard Marshal Teach Group also made a big noise in the 6th floor of Impel Down Eternal Hell not long ago, and took away a lot. Speaking of which, the voice in the phone bug became solemn and trembling. Many, great criminals who once shocked the world. In an instant, Sengoku's expression turned ugly. It wasn't good news for him, for Marine, or even for the world. Impel Down is the world's largest, most strict, prison with the highest level and the largest number of undersea prisons. It is conceivable that if something happened there, what a huge impact it would have on the world. Countless powerful criminals with ferocious personalities will definitely make a comeback once they get out. This world, this sea, will become more chaotic again. Damn. Clenching his fists tightly, even Sengoku cursed at this moment, his eyes glanced in the direction of Impel Down, and his face became extremely ugly. I never imagined that such a chaos would occur in a battle at the top. The well-defended Impel Down, how many of them ran out this time, the powerhouses who had worked so hard to get in? How big will the loss be? In any case, the Whitebeard Pirates must completely win today. Sengoku said angrily. Otherwise, all the plans and hard work he has deliberately made will be in vain. Looking down, the Whitebeard Pirates have completely attacked the Inner Bay port, and are rushing towards the execution platform in the square. The battle situation is changing rapidly, and no one can predict what will happen in the next second. Call. Taking a deep breath, Sengoku once again looked at the ice abyss at the port of Naiwan. Advertisement, John Lu, you should come out too. At the same time, under the ice abyss. Buzz. The void trembled, the crimson mist was boiling, John Lu's eyes looked up to the sky, and suddenly grinned. A crazy smile appeared on his face. This power, I haven't experienced it for 20 years. The right hand is slowly clenched, and the dark red mist, like smoke, is constantly fluttering around the body, and the huge force instantly squeezes the air directly, making a loud noise. Strong as a god. After spitting out 4 words, John Lu's pupils also flashed red light. 8 inner gates, 8th gate, dead gate, open. This is the ultimate power obtained by a human body after breaking the barrier between life and death, and it is also the most powerful power that a mortal body can possess. Ultimate burns life, and the sublimation obtained can even shred the real gods and demons at that moment. The cells of the whole body are burning, and then the hidden power that is usually hidden in the depths of the cells is released as much as possible. Its powerful fluctuations, at this moment, even the surrounding void is crushed, and the space is distorted. Buzz. The air was trembling, the majestic power overflowed, and the ice surface under the feet smashed and shattered, and spread to the wall of the ice abyss not far in front of him. Crack. The cracks appeared quickly, and spiderweb-like cracks appeared on the ice wall. Immediately afterwards, a large piece of ice fell down with a bang. His eyes slowly raised, looking at the sky above his head, like two sharp beams of light, rushing straight up and shooting towards the sky. It can be clearly seen that Jang Lu's pupils seem to be constantly stretching the distance, and a huge golden ship soon emerges in the eyes that were originally empty. Zzzz. The arc of the whole body flashes, and the motto of the arc is quietly suspended in the sky. It's all in place. Muttering, Jang Lu grinned. Then, I should speed up too. Withdrawing his eyes, he gently stretched his body. Boom. The void seems to have been collapsed at this moment, and the force that gushed out from the slight vibration caused the ice surface under the feet and the ice walls on both sides to rattle, causing a huge range. Collapse. High in the sky, above the arc proverbs. I feel a power that makes the soul tremble. Enel looked down and said solemnly, advertisement. This is a very normal thing. The war that happened below, in terms of level, is the top of the current era. Crocodile exhaled a puff of smoke and said in a deep voice. Observation hockey, which allows him to clearly see what is happening below. Not long ago, the battle between Jang Lu and Whitebeard was even more shocking. I'm talking about him. His power has undergone a qualitative change, and it is completely different from the previous state. Too powerful. Is this his true power? Enel ignored Crocodile and said tremblingly. You mean Jang Lu? Crocodile was startled. On the other side, Golden Lion, who was waiting with his back to Chuanyan, heard the words. Suddenly his eyes narrowed, and he spoke in a serious tone. 20 years ago, there were rumors that the day Tiger Jang Lu, except for the shocking day Tiger form. There is a stronger state, but that form seems to be seen only by the dead Roger. After a pause, Golden Lion Shiki walked in front of the two, also looking down. It seems, today, in the face of Whitebeard, Jang Lu's pressure is definitely not small. We will also see his strongest side. After saying these words, Golden Lion's expression became a little complicated. Because of his old age and lack of legs, he only saw Jang Lu's day tiger form, which has to be said to be a pity. Too strong. The power is overflowing, I can feel it, it is about to explode. Suddenly, Enel shouted loudly. Sure enough, at the next moment. Boom. In Marineford directly below, a violent, powerful aura burst into the sky, radiating in all directions. This breath is violent, domineering, and oppressive. In the blink of an eye, a mighty sky shrouded Marineford. Boom. The sound of thunderous vibrations entered everyone's ears, causing their pupils to shrink, and subconsciously turn to look back. A figure was shrouded in blood-red mist, and it was already standing there at some point. The second round has begun. Newgate, Chapter 184, Evening Elephant. Power. The power to make the air tremble. The breath made everyone feel a heavy aura like a mountain. The crimson blood mist lingered around his body, covering his whole body, making it impossible to see the figure standing on the edge of the ice abyss. But everyone made a subconscious judgment. Jang Lu. It's Jang Lu, Admiral. He is still alive, and this terrible breath. In the battlefield, countless shouts of shock or excitement sounded at this moment. Whitebeard turned around abruptly at this moment, his eyes fixed on the figure shrouded in red mist. His eyes became extremely dignified. Call. After taking a slight breath, his eyes sharpened, but there was also a hint of regret. Yu Guang glanced at Ace on the execution platform, and he sighed softly. The time given to me is still too short, but soon, he shouted at Marco beside him. I'll stop Jang Lu, you guys, responsible for rescuing Ace. Marco's expression changed, his eyes staring at the figure shrouded in red mist, his heart trembled, and he could only nod his head deeply. I will, Daddy. Whitebeard grinned and glanced at the sons around him again. Take it easy, he and I are old rivals. Do your own thing, your father, nothing will happen. After this sentence came out, the expressions of Marco and others slowly relaxed, and they nodded heavily. Absolutely can't let Dad down, keep doing what we're supposed to do. Come on, follow me to rescue Ace. The next second, Marco and the others turned their heads sharply and charged Marineford again. At this moment, Whitebeard clenched the Naginata blade Kong Yunkyud in his hand, and his eyes were filled with unprecedented solemnity. He took a deep breath, took heavy steps, and rushed towards the red mist figure in front of him. Before rescuing Ace, it is absolutely impossible for the old man to fall. Never fall down. In one of his eyes, a fierce light burst out. Bang 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 bang. The sound of heavy footsteps, like thunder, echoed in everyone's heart. Let me see your strongest power, Jang Lu. With a low roar, Whitebeard charged towards the figure that was enveloped in a powerful aura in front of him. Newgate. It's really nostalgic. Advertisement. 20 years ago, the only person who saw me in this state was Roger. A faint voice floated out of the red fog. In this day and age, I am afraid that only you can make me show my true power. The red mist suddenly fluctuated, and Jang Lu's face was exposed. But at the moment, it made countless people take a breath. As if the color burned by the flame, the red mist, through the gaps in the skin, continuously transpired and emerged. When the voice fell, his eyes were suddenly sharp, and the blood mist all over his body was also fluttering, as if being blown by the wind, swaying towards the rear. Let's have a fight, the most bloody battle between men. With a loud roar, Jang L stepped on the ice with his right foot. Crack. The ice surface shattered, a huge deep pit suddenly appeared, and then the crack spread, his body twisted suddenly, turned into a stream of light, and shot forward. Boom boom boom. 4 consecutive loud noises and 4 ring-shaped ripples appeared. Jang L's speed broke through the speed of sound in an instant, his body swept through the void, and even a sonic boom that was unique to supersonic speed erupted. This scene made countless people's eyes widen. What a monster's physique. Sengoku yelled. This is the first time he has seen Jang L in such a state. Almost instantly, the blood mist had reached the air in front of Whitebeard. If you look closely, you can notice that the other party is not using any physical skills. Instead, it runs in the air with its legs. This is an extremely terrifying scene. With the body of the flesh, it directly violates the laws of physics and runs wildly in the void, just like on the flat ground. What? Jang L, who was in the air, saw that he was only 100 meters away from Whitebeard. His right fist clenched suddenly, and with a loud roar, he slammed it out. Shishung. Boom. The fist hit the void, the blood-colored mist swayed and fluctuated, and a cylindrical air cannon formed in an instant, swooping down. Whitebeard's pupils contracted, and his huge body leapt to the side. Boom. The large pit with a radius of several hundred meters exploded directly, and the nearby pirates screamed and were rolled up by the aftermath. At this moment, Jang L's body suddenly flickered again, went to another place, and threw out another fist. Buzz. The void shook, and the powerful air cannon blasted out again. Whitebeard let out a loud roar, raised Kong Cloud Cut with his right hand, and swung out a knife. Boom. The ripples radiated in the air, and its body was pushed back several dozen meters. After stabilizing his body, Whitebeard raised his head sharply, his eyes dignified. The strength and speed have skyrocketed 10 times or even dozens of times. His right hand shook, and his left hand was tightly gripped on the handle of the knife. It's going to be hard, muttering, Whitebeard moved his feet and ran out. Advertisement, ha 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 ha. The loud laughter came from the air, and Jang L's figure suddenly tugged, changing the direction again, as if leaving a blood-colored air column in the air. It's not over yet, just began. This battle has only just begun. Its right fist was swung again, and the air cannon crashed down. Whitebeard jumped up and slashed down with his knives in both hands. Boom. The air cannon was divided in two, fell to both sides, and then exploded into a big hole, and there was another scream. His eyes narrowed, Whitebeard stepped on the void and ran towards Jang L in front of him. But the speed of the latter was faster, and with a sudden pull, it was already in front of him. How many rounds can you last with this old body? Jang L grinned and punched out. Whitebeard slashed with his knife, and the shockwave wrapped around it. Boom. Ring-shaped ripples, spreading throughout Marineford. You will never be disappointed. Whitebeard shouted in a deep voice, turning his wrist and slashing again with the knife. But Jang L's speed was even faster, and the retracted fist, carrying a terrifying shock cannon again, slammed down. Boom. Buzz. Whitebeard's hands shook, and Kong Yunshu was shaking violently. Chi. Jang L, who was close at hand, boiled more violently with the red mist all over his body, and what made Whitebeard's heart sink even more. The opponent's body does not seem to be affected by his own shaking fruit. This is a completely different situation from the previous battle. It means that the other party has been able to fully withstand this shockwave that is enough to cause natural disaster-level destructive power. Then it couldn't be better, otherwise I will be very worried. Jang L grinned and swung the other fist out again. Boom. This punch slammed heavily on the Whitebeard Naginata sword, causing the blade to tremble. Immediately afterwards, Kong Yunki, one of the 12 sharp knives, flew out of Whitebeard's hands, shook violently, fell to the ice, and plunged into the ice. His pupils contracted, and Whitebeard's arms were in front of him almost instantly. In the next second, Jang L's fist fell again. Boom. The majestic force tilted, the columnar impact cannon exploded, Whitebeard's body swayed, he raised his head and spurted a mouthful of blood, and the huge body fell like a meteorite. Dad. Daddy. Countless people looked back at this moment, their eyes narrowed, and they shouted loudly. Chapter 185 Unshakable. The cold wind swept through, and the ring-shaped ripples spread farther in the sky. Ice debris rose from the sky, and the white mist evaporated, covering half of the sky, and Whitebeard's figure was completely hidden. At this moment, Marineford lost his voice. The most powerful man in the world pierced through the void like a meteor, fell heavily, and smashed a big pit out of the ice. Everyone looked up blankly and looked at another figure in the void, but in the next moment, his eyes shrank, revealing doubts. What about people? Jang L actually disappeared. They glanced around and suddenly locked on a blood-colored phantom. It's too fast, the naked eye can't see his figure at all. Jang L is rushing towards Dad. There was a sound, and the pirates were inexplicably nervous. The blood-colored phantom, in just an instant, pulled out a long rainbow and rushed towards the place where Whitebeard fell. Until its figure reached the void where the ice chips were stirred up, the violent airwaves slammed, and the endless ice chips shot out in all directions like bullets. This shocking scene caused the people around to exclaim again and again. Boom boom boom. Behind Jang L, there was a sky-shattering sonic boom, and the sonic boom spread out at this time, forming a spectacular scene. Newgate, I can't believe it, you fell so easily. With a loud roar, Jang L rushed straight into the hole where the ice chips were flying like a cannonball. Boom. After a slight pause in the void, the sound of the sky-shattering explosion came out, and everyone's pupils shrank, and then they saw that the pothole, which had radiated nearly hundreds of meters, expanded again and cracked, until it reached thousands of meters. Immediately afterwards, a huge body jumped high and rushed into the sky together with the ice chips that flew out. Kura-la-la-la. You're really welcome to my old bones. Jang L. Whitebeard's laughter came out. Behind him is the falling sunlight and the ice debris flying all over the sky. All kinds of rays of light are refracted at this moment, and the cloak behind him is covered with a layer of colorful rays of light. Dad is all right. Great. Seeing the figure in the sky, the pirates shouted excitedly. Advertisement Marco let out a long sigh of relief, looking at Marine in front of him and the city gate, his eyes sharpened. Jang L's terrifying aura just now, as well as his astonishing offensive methods, really made people tremble. Even he thought it was difficult for his father to support him. Now, seeing that Dad is safe, it is natural to continue with their original plan. Only by breaking through the gates of the city wall in front of us can the army enter Marineford Square and get closer to the execution platform. Rescue Ace to Hope. This door is the biggest obstacle in front of us. With flashing eyes, Marco took a deep breath and drank suddenly behind him. Let Oz come over, only he can break through this door. The pirate next to him was startled when he heard the words, then gritted his teeth and nodded. They all knew that Oz was huge and appeared on the battlefield. Although his attack power and propulsive power would be greatly increased, he would also become a target and would be extremely dangerous. But Dad was dragged by Jang L, and in order to rescue Ace, he had no choice. Above the sky, Whitebeard looked down, seeing the efforts of Marco and others, and also seeing Marine frantically blocking. Similarly, he also saw the figure walking in the deep pit below. Is this your strongest state? Sure enough, strong like a monster. With a deep voice, Whitebeard suddenly stretched out his arms. His left hand clenched his fist in front, his right hand slowly placed behind him, and he suddenly clenched his fist. Crack. In this fist, the void seemed to be shattered, a halo appeared, and then rapidly expanded, and in the blink of an eye, a spherical, vibrating ball of light radiating ripples. I can fight with your state. Even if you are old and look like this, even if you fall here, fall on this battlefield. The old man has no regrets. A low voice came from Whitebeard's mouth, his right fist pierced through the void, and suddenly slammed towards the figure below that was surrounded by blood-colored mist. Crack. Like glass, the void ahead shattered, and a terrifying shock wave shook everything. Molecules, atoms, and matter all shook violently at this moment, vibrating at a high speed at an unimaginable frequency. The dense, twisted cracks charged towards the figure below, which was surrounded by blood mist, and the speed was also fast to the limit. Jang L, who was walking, paused and grinned suddenly when he saw the distortion above his head, the space seemed to be tilted. His right hand was slowly raised and pressed in front of him. Just the next second, fine cracks and terrifying shock waves slammed into his hand. Boom. Advertisement. At this moment, the air, space, and the ice surface under your feet seemed to form an invisible barrier, firmly blocking the front and blocking the infinite vibration. Distorted, vibrated, collapsed, the space at this moment was disturbed into an unimaginable appearance. Boom. But soon, the vibration was blocked, as if angry, more powerful, and the shock of Pei-Ran came violently. Jang L's body trembled, and he started to step back. A large piece of ice debris was swept by his feet and piled up into a mountain behind him. Above the sky, Whitebeard swung his left fist back, clenched into a fist, and his eyes were cold. The next second, his left fist held the shock wave and swung down again. Crack. A more majestic shock wave bombarded Jang L, and the fine cracks formed a columnar beam at this moment, which condensed. It affects the surrounding lines, undulating randomly, the ice surface cracks, and a gap appears on the ground. Boom. A more powerful shock wave bombarded Jang L's right hand, causing his body to shake violently, and quickly retreated toward the rear. Whoa whoa whoa. The ice debris pushed up by his back and feet was already dozens of meters high. Immediately following, blood dripped from Jang L's right hand, causing his eyes to narrow slightly. This drop of blood has not yet landed on the ground, but it has been burned into blood mist by the high temperature around him. But this means that Whitebeard's attack at the moment is extremely powerful. Otherwise, it would be impossible to cause harm to his physique acquired between life and death. Incorporating various powers in the pirate world, including the fruit of recovery, Haki, and the 8 inner gates, his current state is no longer a simple door to death. It is a body that is infinitely enhanced in all directions, which can be called the body of a god and demon. Boom. Another wave, a terrifying shock came, and more blood dripped from Jang L's right hand, turning into a blood mist. Is there a steady stream of shock waves like ocean waves? Muttering, the corners of Jang L's mouth curled up. It really surprised me, I have never seen such power as you. Newgate. Afterwards, he kept his left hand on his side, slowly raised it, and blocked it in front of him. Buzz. The shock wave was once again firmly blocked in front. Jang L's unremarkable body, which doesn't seem to be very strong, is like a mountain, standing there steadily. Unshakable. Chapter 186. Crack. The dense cracks spread rapidly on both sides of the void in front of Jang L. In just a few short breaths, the void with a radius of 10,000 meters stretched out fine cracks, and there were countless cracks in Marineford's square. Boom. Everything was shaking. People were unsteady on their feet and screamed one after another. The duel between these two has spread to the entire Marineford. Sengoku roared loudly. The execution platform he was standing on was also crumbling at the moment, constantly shaking. And this is still some distance from the center of the battlefield. It's hard to imagine what it would be like if the battle happened right in front of you. Whitebeard's shock fruit. The destructive power reaches natural disaster level, it is difficult to defend at all. I can't imagine how Jang Lu blocked it out of those palms. What's the matter with his physical state at the moment? I'm afraid I won't be able to understand the secrets without fighting against him in person. Garp said in a deep voice, staring solemnly at the battle below. It can be said that the battle between the two figures on the battlefield is simply the most peak battle in this era, more than 20 years ago. Top strength, top duel. The so-called battle of the top, their battle is the duel of the top. Buzz buzz. The chaotic airflow, the violently vibrating molecules, and the distorted space appeared one by one in front of Jang Lu. These shocks with extremely high fluctuation frequency, no matter who they hit, the destructive power is destructive, and there is no problem that they cannot be prevented. But at this moment, Jang Lu, surrounded by blood mist, seemed to be unscathed. The terrifying shaking lasted for a long while before it slowly subsided. Can you block my attack perfectly? That's amazing, Jang Lu. Whitebeard roared, and the huge body swooped down instantly. Jang Lu also raised his head abruptly, grinned and let out a laugh, his feet stomped on the ground, and he rose into the sky with a bang. You know what, Newgate, Shixiang has a total of 5 speed levels. The sound came into Whitebeard's ears, causing his eyes to shrink, and his right fist swung fiercely at Jang Lu, who had already reached the front. Boom. The fists collided, the ripples spread, and the bodies of the two were shaken, and they were shaken to the back by the violent force. After more than a dozen flips, Jang Lu forcibly stabilized his body and grinned again. Just now, my speed was only 1 level. Advertisement. After a slight pause, Jang Lu's figure suddenly flashed, his legs stomped on the void, pulling out a phantom, blowing a large gust of wind. In just a split second, he was already in front of Whitebeard and punched directly. Buzz. Whitebeard's pupils shrank, his head tilted, and a terrifying cylindrical shock wave rubbed his ears, blasting directly into the distance. Boom. Above Marineford, more than a dozen buildings were directly destroyed by this column-shaped shock wave and turned into dust. So fast. Surprised in his eyes, Whitebeard's reaction was also extremely fast, he turned around and threw his right fist fiercely. But this punch only hit the phantom. When he looked up again, Jang Lu was already thousands of meters away. Such a terrifying speed made Whitebeard's eyes dignified, and observation hockey had already opened to the limit. It's hard for the naked eye to keep up with his speed. At this moment, the blood mist suddenly fluctuated, and Jang Lu's body was in front of him almost instantly. Now it is, second speed. With his arms stretched out in front of him, Jang Lu's fist fell heavily on him, and with a bang, Whitebeard fell off the ice, and his huge body collapsed a large piece of the ice. At the same time, his reaction was extremely fast, his knees bent, and he jumped up suddenly. Sure enough, in the next second, Jang Lu's right foot stepped on the place where he was just now, crushing the already collapsed ice surface. Don't underestimate me, brat. Whitebeard shouted loudly, and stomped his right foot towards Jang Lu below. Boom. The spherical light ripples spread out, and a shock wave emerges from its right foot, and the speed also reaches ultimate at this moment. Jang Lu looked up and saw that the right foot carrying the shock wave had been stomped hard. He grinned and put his arms in front of him. Awesome, Newgate. As soon as the voice fell, the violent shock wave, the power, hit the arms. Boom. Jang Lu flew out, his body swept across the ice surface at high speed, and a large piece of ice cracked, splashing the sky with ice debris. His body shook, and the force of the impact was stopped abruptly, and then a twist and madness appeared on his face. Ha 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 ha. The void vibrated, Jang Lu stepped on the void with both feet and ran out again. Call out. The blood-colored rainbow flashed and pulled out an arc, and in just an instant, it was in front of Whitebeard again. Feel my strength and speed. Newgate. Advertisement. A loud roar came out, and Jang Lu threw a punch. Whitebeard hurriedly raised his arm to resist, and with a bang, his huge body also quickly retreated behind him, and his feet swept out a pile of ice chips on the ice surface. Immediately after, his eyes glared, his right foot slammed, and with a bang, he charged towards Jang Lu again. Boom boom boom. The two kept colliding and retreating. Every time they collided, they would retreat to the back because of the enormous strength between them. Every time there is a collision, the ice surface under your feet will also explode into a deep pit. The current lacing, the ripples rolled over, and the large ice surface was broken. That's it. Jang Lu, can it be faster? Whitebeard roared, blood was oozing from the corner of his mouth, but his mental state was obviously more excited, and he was fully committed to this duel. Yes. The surrounding scene was rapidly retreating and twisting. Jang Lu grinned, the blood mist all over his body boiled, and the speed suddenly increased again. Then 3 speed. Boom. The air burst open, and this violent and domineering speed is simply shocking. At this moment, the naked eye can't see Jang Lu's figure at all, and can only see the impact of the column in the void, on the ice. Yes, Jang Lu has turned into a bloody shock at this moment. Boom boom boom. After 4 consecutive explosions, Jang Lu has appeared in front of Whitebeard. So turbulent. Whitebeard let out a loud roar, stretched out his arms and spread his fingers, facing Jang Lu, who was already close at hand, and suddenly pulled the next one. Buzz. The void fluctuated, and the huge bundle-like ripples fluctuated like a river, sliding down from the top of the head. Crack. Then, there is the cracking sound. Everything cracked. Jang Lu's body, which was impacted, lost its balance, as if entering a different dimension, tilting and twisting. Boom. Behind it, Marineford, a large building, is stirring up dust at this moment, shattering, collapsing, and shaking. What? Jang Lu was startled for a while, then burst out laughing. It's more fun. In the next second, his feet stomped on the void suddenly, and his body moved suddenly, as if he had jumped from one dimension to another. What? Whitebeard's pupils shrank, and between the electric light and flint, he saw that the other party had come to his side. Chapter 187 The Cruelty of Battle. The speed of ultimate can penetrate almost everything. It is also the most difficult attack in the world. At that moment of pulling, even the space was tilted, showing a layered appearance, as if it was divided into several dimensional spaces. But Jang Lu, in milliseconds, jumped over such a dimension. Simply neat, simple and direct, the moment his figure appeared, his right foot was kicked sharply. Boom. This kick hits Whitebeard's conditioned reflex, raising his right arm. The huge body was thrown out in an instant, rolling on the ice one after another on the top and bottom of the feet, and flew nearly 3,000 meters before it stopped. Dad. On the battlefield, a nervous exclamation sounded again. But Jang Lu's attack still didn't stop. As soon as his right foot stepped on the ground, the distance of 100 meters was instantly crossed, leaving a series of sonic booms and sonic booms behind him. In the blink of an eye, he came to Whitebeard again. Jang Lu. A low roar sounded, and Whitebeard raised his fist and hammered it down. Boom. Speed and power collided at this moment, and Whitebeard's body trembled violently. After a meal, the two quickly retreated to the rear. Cough, cough, cough. After the body stagnates, Whitebeard's body suddenly shakes, and he bends over to spit out a large amount of blood, which stains the broken ice surface under his feet. This scene made countless people in the battlefield look sideways. Marine's eyes flickered, and the pirates changed color. Hurry up and break through here. Dad, I'm afraid it won't last long. Marco gritted his teeth, retracted his eyes, and roared loudly. Boom 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 boom. It was also at this moment that a huge figure appeared from the back of the pirate, stepped on the ground, and walked towards here. It's Oz. He's finally here. As long as we break through this gate, we can rescue Ace. The roar was deafening, one after another resounding over Marineford. The pirate's aura was even higher because of Whitebeard's vomiting and injury. In the next time, he started to attack the square frantically. Hurrah la la la. After spitting out a few mouthfuls of blood, Whitebeard's mental state seemed to be stronger and higher. He did not observe the battle of his subordinates anymore, and all his energy was concentrated on the man directly opposite him. There is no doubt that this is a match of the pinnacle. For him, it was also a few times in his life that he was able to do his best to make his blood boil. Roger, Shiki, Sengoku, Garp, Zephyr. Advertisement. And you, in my life, I have fought a lot of powerhouses. With a sigh, Whitebeard took a deep breath and his face became fierce again. But, only you, Jang Lu. At this moment when my life is not far away, I feel alive again. Let me feel the joy of fighting as a warrior, a pirate. When the voice fell, his feet suddenly stepped on the ground and ran wildly. Old man, I must leave a new era for my sons. This battle, it's not me, it's you. Majestic, domineering, and terrifying aura rose from Whitebeard's body at this moment. Bang 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 bang. The footsteps stepped on the ice and made a dull sound, but it seemed to be stepping on everyone's heart, making them feel suffocated. Yes, a tingling sensation that makes the scalp tingle. The sense of urgency that teeters on the edge of life and death with every blow. The sense of loss of life that blood is dripping all the time. This is also the peak, the most brutal duel. This is the real, brutal battle. Jang Lu raised his head slowly, stomped on the ground suddenly, a piece of ice shattered, and his body shot out. Humans are such cruel animals. The two figures approached quickly. Whitebeard was obviously slow, but he was powerful and imposing, as if a mountain was moving. Jang Lu turned into a streamer, and in the blink of an eye, he crossed a distance of 1,000 meters, incredibly fast. Achieving such a speed with a physical body is really impressive, full of powerful shock. Jang Lu Admiral, you are really scary. Kizaru's eyes flickered, and he muttered. Many people are paying attention to this battle, and they clearly recognize the horror of these two people on the battlefield. Boom. In the blink of an eye, the two collided fiercely. Jang Lu's right punch hit Whitebeard's chin, and the violent force exploded. A column-shaped shock wave passed through his head and shot backward, blasting the ice surface into a bottomless pit. Tick. The blood was dripping. Whitebeard's face was cold, half of his chin was twisted, but he didn't seem to feel any pain. At the same time, his fist also hit Jang Lu's nose. Buzz. The shock wave just broke out at this moment. Jang Lu's nose collapsed directly, his teeth were also shattered, and they were thrown out. Hiss. Many people gasped and shuddered. Advertisement. After another light meal, the bodies of the two were thrown out in the opposite direction, tumbled quickly on the ice, and they were completely shaken, and they retreated for several kilometers. But soon, they jumped up again and rushed towards each other. 4 speed. Jang Lu yelled, and the speed shot up another level. He could naturally see that the old man from Whitebeard had already started desperately. This menacing appearance came from the madness that he had to fight even if he died. Roar. Whitebeard growled too. A gust of wind blew overhead, and the two collided again. But this time, the fist that Whitebeard swung was empty, his body shook and his eyes narrowed. Looking down suddenly, he saw that Jang Lu's figure had appeared on his abdomen, his fists clenched, and he punched out. Boom. The powerful force hit his abdomen, and the column-shaped shock wave penetrated through the body, rushed to the sky, and penetrated a cloud. Whitebeard's body shook, his eyes wavered slightly, and the light became brighter. Well, after a soft murmur, he opened his mouth, blood dripped from the corner of his mouth and dripped on the ground. Under the strength of Jang Lu's punch, all kinds of organs might be crushed under his abdomen. Newgate. Jang Lu roared loudly, open a door to a new era for you. Crack. In this era, there is no longer a ship to carry me. The speed of this grip was unbelievably fast, and even Jang Lu couldn't dodge it. Jang Lu. The roar resounded through Marineford, and Whitebeard threw a punch, hitting Jang Lu's abdomen heavily. Be sure to rescue Ace. When Whitebeard heard it, his eyes suddenly sharpened, and his big fan-like hand suddenly stretched out and grabbed the other's head. Sons. Roar. Then it's up to you to take the last leg of the journey with Lousy. The glass shattered, and countless cracks radiated from Jang Lu's body to the surroundings. You're right. Then, his other hand clenched tightly, and with a bang, the shock wave was wrapped out. Let this old man fight for his life. Roar. Suddenly, Whitebeard threw his right hand, and Jang Lu's body was thrown up. The roar sounded, and Whitebeard's eyes burned with fire, brilliant and bright. Chapter 188. Broken. 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 Everything visible to the naked eye is shattering rapidly. The air vibrated, an unimaginably harsh sound, buzzing, making people's hearts thump. The invisible pressure spread out, and even though it was still a long way from the battlefield between the two, everyone present still felt their scalps tingle. Admiral. Bagu and the others widened their eyes, looking at the body that was thrown into the air, and its body seemed to be shattered, and shouted loudly. Jang Lu. Sengoku's expression changed and his pupils contracted. Oh yo, this is really an amazing scene. If it's me, I'm afraid I won't survive. There was a flash of light on Kizaru's sunglasses, he murmured, the expression on his face was serious. It's like the two strongest beasts in the Colosseum, fighting the most ferocious battle in the world. Jang Lu uncle, you won't let me down. Right. Brother Doflamming stared at the field and said in a deep voice. Whitebeard vs Jang Lu. This world's top battle naturally attracts the eyes of countless people. It also made many people, from the beginning of this battle, until now, never leave their sight. The shocking, ferocious and beast-like battle just now was naturally seen by them all. They admit that when their identities are swapped and they become anyone in the field, they may not be able to last a few rounds, and even their lives will be lost there. Crack. The fragmented space is still twisting, spreading farther. Jang Lu's body slowly fell, as if time had stopped at this moment. Puff. Finally, when a mouthful of blood spurted out, time resumed. The moment the blood came out, it turned into a mist of blood, instantly surrounding Jang Lu's body. Newgate. A low roar came from Jang Lu's mouth. In the next second, his body slammed heavily on the ice surface. Roar. Whitebeard roared, blood dripping from the corners of his mouth, dripping down his chin, but his condition seemed to be completely unaffected. The sturdy arms and clenched fists pressed against Jang Lu's abdomen like that, slamming directly into the ice. Boom. Advertisement. Huge gaps, deep pits, and cracks emerged again. Ambition. Dream. One Piece. What this old man has pursued in his life. A low voice came out and diffused in the air. The other arm was raised high, clenched into a fist, and colorful rays of light were emitted against the background of flying ice chips and the sun shining. It's just the safety of the family. Immediately afterwards, the punch hit Jang Lu in the face again. The violent power can destroy almost everything, and it also makes his head shudder, splashing a large blood mist. How about you, Jang Lu? Let's talk about life, what are you looking for? Whitebeard's voice spread throughout Marineford, and many people were slightly taken aback. Under this brutal, tense fight, Whitebeard actually chatted with Jang Lu about his dreams. Pursue. Jang Lu's voice sounded in the next second. Along with it, there was a more powerful and majestic terrifying aura that burst out. Now, this is not the time to talk to you about this. Just think about it, how long can you fight? The voice fell, the figure wrapped in blood-colored mist suddenly reversed, stepped on the ground, and with a bang, it was already high in the sky. 5 speed. Almost everyone could see that the blood mist around Jang Lu's body was boiling and burning violently, as if life had been ignited at this moment, exuding a frightening aura. Roar. Faintly, there was a roar like a beast, and it sounded behind Jang Lu. Half of the sky was reflected in blood at this moment, becoming depressed and dull. Nice momentum. Whitebeard looked up and grinned. The blood is still dripping, but he doesn't seem to feel any pain in his body. All he can do is the excitement, and boiling thick fighting intent in his body. The body slowly sank, crushing the ice and snow, his arms slowly stretched out, his fists clenched, and with a bang, the shock wave rippled and quickly emerged. How long can I fight, you ask? What a boring question. Whitebeard said coldly. Looking up at the blood-colored fog in the sky, he saw the other party snorted and swooped down. The speed and strength were even more terrifying than before. Advertisement. Even when diving, the wind pressure driven by it formed a huge air cannon, which could easily destroy a large mountain. At this moment, Jang Lu, with his momentum and physique, has become tyrannical to a terrifying and trembling realm, beyond the realm of human beings and comparable to gods. Boom 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 boom. All the way to dive, all the way to vibrate constantly, the sound wave cloud has almost become the symbol of Jang Lu. After a few flashes, his body was already on top of Whitebeard's head, and he punched down neatly without any bells and whistles. Boom. Whitebeard raised his fist to meet him, and a deafening collision sound came out, and a circle of air waves centered on them, swept away frantically toward the surroundings. Oh. Jang Lu narrowed his eyes slightly, looking at his opponent who was close at hand, with a dignified look in his eyes. Shixiang at 5 speeds is not something anyone can stop. But at this moment, the huge body of Whitebeard, standing on the ice and snow, was like a mountain, motionless, and he blocked the blow with a strong force. Who are you, lousy? Jang Lu, I'm Whitebeard. The roar sounded, and it reached his ears, and Whitebeard's other arm suddenly raised, punching him in the face. Boom. The fist slammed down heavily. Jang Lu's body was shaken, his balance was lost, and he began to reverse, but in an instant, it had become a posture of head and feet. With a twinkle in his eyes, he lifted his right foot and kicked Whitebeard's chest hard. Crack. The sound of a clear bone crack sounded, but the huge body was only shocked, and it remained motionless, just like Mount Tai. Whitebeard's eyes turned blood red at this moment, and his right hand suddenly stretched out, grabbing Jang Lu's right foot. How long do you want to fight? Old man, how long will I fight with you? The deep roar echoed, and Whitebeard suddenly raised his hand, grabbed Jang Lu's right foot, and waved it down. Boom. The ground cracked, and Jang Lu swept away from the ice like a cannonball, hitting Marineford Square all the way, smashing into countless buildings. Then, it slammed into the headquarters building, and with a bang, the entire tall and magnificent headquarters building distorted and collapsed at this moment, turning into ruins. Countless Marines all raised their heads at this moment, their pupils contracted and widened. You all underestimate the old man. Marine. Whitebeard's roar echoed, and the wind over Marineford suddenly became anxious. His arms stretched out, and he suddenly punched forward again. Crack. Marineford, cracked. Chapter 189 is dead. Boom. The deafening sound resounded non-stop, and all the Marines standing on the ground changed their expressions and shook violently at this moment. Earthquake. An unprecedented earthquake occurred. When the ground beneath my feet cracked and countless cracks spread to the building, with a bang, the building collapsed, stirring up a large amount of dust. From a distance, the entire Marineford at this moment seems to be neatly divided into several different levels, separating, twisting, undulating and shaking. Ah 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 ah. Hurry up and grab the things around you, the big earthquake is coming. This is hell. Frightened screams came one after another from Marine. Whitebeard's punch was devastating to Marineford. On the execution stand, Sengoku looked solemn and ugly, looking down at Marine who was panicking below. Buzz. The execution platform he was standing on was also shaking violently, and the two jailers behind him were unsteady and panicked. Call. Taking a deep breath, Sengoku suddenly yelled at the phone bug in his hand. Don't panic. All cheer me up. Marineford is ruined and can be rebuilt. Now, your task is to win this war. A loud voice spread throughout the naval headquarters, and the terrified, panicked Marine heard the words, slowly woke up, and looked forward again. Boom. At this moment, there was a loud noise, and the huge giant Oz slammed into the city wall gate. Immediately afterwards, a large piece of stone flew, and Marine, who was blocking the city gate, was shaken and flew to the back. Sengoku's eyes changed and he became serious. Oz. Ace roared loudly, looking at the huge body that fell in front of the city wall, trembling all over his body. We will definitely save you. This is not only the purpose of my father's coming here, but also the truest thought in my heart. Because, you are my friend of Oz. Ace. Oz roared loudly. His huge body charged here, he didn't know how much artillery bombardment he had experienced, and the weapons of the general-level officer were attacked. At this moment, a young figure with a straw hat strode across the city wall, followed by a powerful team in prison uniforms. Nice job, big man. I will save Ace for sure. Advertisement. It was the Straw Hat Luffy, whose charge at Marineford was almost the smoothest. Having witnessed the battle between Whitebeard and Jang Lu with his own eyes, he felt a heavier heart than ever before. He clearly knew the difficulties and dangers of this trip, but he still chose to move forward without hesitation. Make way for Luffy, Ivankov shouted, his eyes blinked, and the laser light shot out, blowing up a piece of marine. Compared to the Whitebeard Pirates team, the Luffy-centered troopers' charging speed was not slow at all, and it took the lead. Whitebeard watched this scene from a distance, standing there like a mountain. His expression was calm, without any excitement or joy. Jang Lu. After his eyes flashed, he stared straight ahead again, thousands of meters away, within 10,000 meters of Marineford. In the ruins, a figure surrounded by blood-colored mist had appeared again, with his arms up to the sky and his head slightly tilted, as if he was stretching. At the same time, on the execution platform, Sengoku stared at the man who stepped up. Garp, I'm here to accompany my grandson on his last journey. Garp's face was gloomy and he said lightly. Sengoku's mouth moved, but he didn't say anything, just frowned and looked down at the battlefield below. PFF'd. Garp, who was on the execution platform, sat down next to Ace. Grandfather. Ace whispered. Garp turned his head to glance at his own grandson, and let out a long sigh, but in the end he didn't speak. Boom. At this moment, a loud bang was heard in front of the headquarters building, and a blood-colored figure rose into the sky, driving endless gusts of wind, and in an instant, it reached the ice surface of the inner bay. Immediately afterwards, another column-shaped shock wave swept up, heavily bombarding Whitebeard, who was as heavy as a mountain in that stand. Boom. With a bang, Whitebeard drew 2 kilometers behind him. Your body is already dead. Newgate. Suddenly, a loud roar resounded through Marineford, causing countless people to look sideways, and their hearts were shocked. This is Zhang Lu's voice, and there is an unusual meaning in the words. Is the body dead? What means? Dad. Marco turned his head, tears welling up in his eyes. Daddy. Advertisement. At this moment, countless members of the Whitebeard Pirates burst into tears. Hurrah la 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 la. What nonsense are you talking about? Boy. Isn't the old man still alive and well? In the next second, Whitebeard's laughter came out again. Then, his arm waved out, and even collided with Zhang Lu again. With terrifying strength, he flew out of a kilometer again. When he bent over, he vomited blood, and a pool of blood soon gathered on the ice. You deserve my respect, so, I will use my strongest move to send you away. Accompany you through the last journey. Zhang Lu's voice came out, and countless people in the battlefield looked to where he was. Buzz. I saw the blood mist boil, twist, and become even more astonishing. Like a beast phantom. Night guy. Whoa. A roar resounded through the Marineford void. Everyone felt the terrifying, majestic breath at this moment, making people tremble in their hearts and feel suffocated. On the other side, a stone bridge leading to the execution platform has also been built. Luffy, go ahead, rescue Ace, Ivankov exclaimed. Marco and the others were also shocked, and there was hope in their eyes. From this moment on, all Whitebeards, escort that kid, don't let anyone disturb him. They had already noticed the difference. For example, it was difficult for him and others to break through Marineford's square, but the Straw Hat Boy rushed in inexplicably. Another example is the attitude of some of the guys in Marine towards the Straw Hat. These are subtle and difficult to detect on the battlefield, but the attentive person can spot them. Fulfill Dad's wish and rescue Ace. I'll leave it to you, Ace's brother. Marco murmured in his heart. He rolled his eyes and looked at Whitebeard again. Dad. He murmured 2 words, but tears had blurred his vision. He knew, from the moment just now, he understood. Daddy is dead. Chapter 190 New Era. Location, in Marineford. Time, at the time when the Whitebeard Pirates launched a war to break through the walls of Marineford. The war continues. The screams of killing were loud, and the sound of artillery fire roared constantly, resounding in everyone's ears. Being in this battlefield, blood and stumps, make adrenaline soar. Emotions such as fear, etc., almost rarely exist, and some only have the strong will to do everything in the face of life and death. Buzz. The sky above Marineford was twisting, shaking, and waving in countless streaks. It was as if a pebble was thrown into the calm lake water, creating a circle of ripples. All the powerhouses present were watching the figures of the 2 on the ice surface of the Nawan. At this moment, every one of the Whitebeard Pirates has attacked Marineford Square, and there are only 2 people standing on the ice in the inner bay. This huge battlefield belongs to those 2 people. The blood-colored mist, twisting, transpiring, fluctuating in the void, rose to the sky, covering half of the sky, making countless people feel terrified and uneasy. The fluctuating aura around Zhang Lu's body was too terrifying, powerful, and vast. It has even reached a level that makes people tremble and comes from the fear of the soul. Just like a Shira monster from hell, the instinct from the depths of the organism's genes makes them feel trembling. Ow! The low roar kept resounding, and the sky behind Zhang Lu fluctuated violently. Such a terrifying aura. Is this what you look like with full firepower? I'm really happy to see you like this when this old man's life is not too long ago. Whitebeard's legs sank slightly, his fists clenched slowly, and he made a low sound. Under him, the blue ice surface has been dyed blood red. Suddenly, the sky ahead vibrated violently, the blood-colored mist fluctuated, and then converged, all condensed and compressed into the fast-moving figure. Roar. The roar of the beast was so loud that it was like a thunderous roar, and the naked eye could see that lightning interlaced and wrapped around the blood-colored figure. What a terrifying oppressive force this is. Zhang Lu, what the hell is going on? Moria cried out in horror. He had never seen such a human being. He was clearly flesh and blood, but he had reached such a shocking level. His level of life seemed to have already exceeded the scope of human beings, reaching an unimaginable level. Everyone's pupils widened at this moment, staring at the body that surrounded the beast-shaped phantom. Soon, the 2 figures pulled and approached. Dad. Ace raised his head sharply and roared. Ow! The deafening roar of the beast also sounded, and under the bloody shadow, Zhang Lu lifted his foot and kicked out suddenly. Come on, Zhang Lu. Whitebeard's pupils widened, his back turned to the gate of justice, he let out a roar, and waved his arms fiercely. Boom! A frenzied, scorching blood-colored shock wave instantly drowned Whitebeard's huge body, swept behind him with a mighty force, and slammed into the door of justice with a bang. Advertisement. Crack. Immediately afterwards, the ice surface cracked, and a huge deep pit appeared. The hard, thick door of justice also burst open at this moment and shattered into iron filings. What? Just kidding. That's the door of justice. Also, There are still at least a few kilometers away from them. Just the shock wave shattered the door of justice. No, not only that, you look at the sea in the distance. Everyone's eyes widened at this moment, and the whole body was trembling. The power of Zhang Lu's kick is beyond everyone's imagination. The blood-colored shock wave passed over Whitebeard, over the ice surface of the inner bay, over the gate of justice, and hit the sea in the distance, and then there was a rumbling sound. The sea surface collapsed, dented for hundreds of kilometers, and then rolled up high after a meal. Then, the tsunami broke out. Zzzzz. The blood-colored electric current made a dense sound. Zhang Lu's feet fell on the ground, and he slowly raised his head. Zhang Lu. Suddenly, a voice sounded, close at hand. The gust of wind blew, and the blood mist covering the front was blown away, revealing a tragic, huge body covered in blood. It's Whitebeard. Very satisfied. This battle. Whitebeard grinned, and his voice came out, but his chin was already crooked, and even the clothes on his body had disappeared, leaving only the broken strips of cloth between his legs. Its huge body looks complete on the outside, but it is covered with blood, but its internal organs, muscles, and bones have long been broken, and under the terrifying force, they all shattered. Tell the old man, what is your purpose? The deep voice came. Zhang Lu raised his head, his eyes became serious. The state of the other party seems to be perfect, and the light in his eyes is also very bright. But he knew that Whitebeard was dying. Purpose. Taking a deep breath, Zhang Lu stared into each other's eyes. Beat you. Rescue my nephew. Portgas d'Ace. Then. Change the world. Whitebeard froze when he heard it, and then he laughed. Culera la 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 la. It's really a declaration of the second year. But, it fits your style. As he spoke, his tone suddenly became emotional, and he sighed softly. Advertisement. Do you know, this old man has been very satisfied in this life. I am not interested in any one piece, 4 emperors, #1 in the world, various titles. All I care about is my family. Me those. His eyes glanced ahead, and what he saw was a familiar face with tears streaming down his face and crying bitterly. Lovely sons. Finally, Whitebeard's eyes stopped on Zhang Lu. Since you have such a purpose, then, you must be fully prepared. Next, Ace, it's up to you. After a pause, Whitebeard's eyes were complicated. If you can, please take care of me, my sons. Zhang Lu's face was calm, the blood mist on his body was fading away, revealing the upper body whose robes had long since been torn and disappeared. 8 abdominal muscles, well-proportioned lines, and a body without any scars and bloodline. This scene made countless people's pupils shrink. Okay, what else do you want to say? Zhang Lu nodded. He felt that the breath of the man in front of him was weakening, or in other words, disappearing. Anything to say? The wind picked up suddenly, and Whitebeard's words drifted over Marineford. Everyone. Whitebeard laughed and looked forward, his eyes calm and calm. Whitebeard may have fallen, but soon, the entire Marineford will usher in a more powerful and terrifying opponent. Old man, it has also been buried in the old times. The corners of his eyes shook violently, and Sengoku clenched his fists. Also at this moment, Luffy is galloping, Garp is in front of him. There is no ship that carries us in this era. Sengoku's face was ugly, his eyes were extremely solemn, and he stared at Zhang Lu. Kura la la la. Sengoku's expression changed suddenly, and he stared at the figure that seemed to calm down on the ice surface of the inner bay. In this conversation, he heard every word clearly. One Piece. You're quite right, Roger, Whitebeard, Garp, rocks. A melodious, high-pitched speech with a strong smile suddenly spread over Marineford and spread to all corners of the world. It's real. A new era has come. Eyes suddenly rolled, Sengoku stared at Ace. Chapter 191 Ace. A low, calm voice spread throughout Marineford. Everyone in the battlefield turned to look at the figure at this moment. Zhang Lu. Garp looked complicated and muttered. Admiral, Bagu, Promi and the others seemed to realize something, their eyes sharpened, and they clenched the weapons in their hands. Dad, Marco and the others burst into tears. They could feel that the man they were familiar with had lost his breath. Are you finally going to tear off your disguise? Akainu said coldly. His eyes stared at the figure in the field, and the other party's trend became more and more obvious. As Whitebeard's breath dissipated, it seemed that he didn't intend to hide anymore. The words just now, and the momentum displayed at the moment, all represent unusual meanings. Whirring whirring. The cold wind blew past, rolling the ice debris on the inner bay, fluttering with the wind, and raising them one after another. Zhang Lu raised his head and looked at Whitebeard who was standing opposite, as if he was still alive. The wind whistled in his ears, and Whitebeard stood there quietly, motionless, like a mountain standing, motionless, even if the breath was cut off, it still did not fall. His jaw was broken, and the ribs, muscles, and organs in his body were almost all shattered. After the battle with Zhang Lu, the injuries on his body are innumerable. The skin was covered with blood, and the insides were all shattered, leaving only one shelf that seemed to be still intact. What supports his fight is not his old body with many hidden dangers, but his strong will, his belief in saving his son and his family. People will eventually grow old, but the old man Whitebeard is destined to be remembered by the world and cannot be forgotten. Everyone will remember that in this world, there is an old man who once gave his life to fight for his family, not hesitate to show his own life, but also to pass the torch of hope for the future and the new era. Daddy. On the execution stand, Ace burst into tears. Garp's face was heavy, and he got up slowly and walked towards Luffy, who had already rushed over. In the blink of an eye, he stood firmly on the stone bridge that was built. Grandpa, get out of the way! Luffy yelled, looking angry. I'm never letting you walk through here, Luffy. Garp also roared in a deep voice, jumped with both feet, and rushed forward fiercely. Both let out a loud roar, a roar. Advertisement. The departure of Whitebeard did not mean the end of the war. Ace was still not rescued, and the war was still going on. In the inner bay port, Jang Lu walked on foot, and wherever he passed, both pirates and marine gave way. In the end, he came to Freya and the others. Prome. With narrowed eyes, Jang Lu looked at the stone bridge and said lightly. Phone bug. Promey nodded quickly and handed the phone bug to his admiral. It was also at this moment that there was a loud explosion, and Garp fell from the stone bridge, and fell heavily on the ground, sitting there with a pale face. Ace, here I come. Luffy's roar echoed through Marineford. Seeing this scene, Jang Lu grinned and dialed the phone bug. Hey, the deep voice came, making Jang Lu's eyes flash. Are you all ready to debut? Everyone. Jang Lu grinned. We can't wait, but have your personal affairs been dealt with again? The playful voice made Jang Lu smile even more. Looking up, he had already run all over the execution platform and ran to the figure in the straw hat next to Ace. It'll be fine right now. It must be very tiring to fight against a world-class powerhouse like Whitebeard. Are you in good shape now? The old voice came, making Jang Lu smile softly. It consumes a lot, so, next, I'm afraid I have to rely on you to help. This kind of thing, you don't need to talk about it, you are the boss. Hurry up and start. An impatient voice came. Jang Lu smiled. Well then. His eyes looked at the execution platform again, and the Straw Hat Boy Luffy had come to Ace's side. This scene also made Sengoku, who was standing beside him, look gloomy and dripping with water. Ace, I'll get you out right away, Luffy said with a big laugh. He didn't expect it to go so smoothly, so he approached Ace, and as long as he untied the other party's shackles, he would be able to rescue his big brother. Luffy. Advertisement. The sadness in Ace's heart was relieved a little by the arrival of his younger brother, and he cried out. Damn, how do I get this out of the way? Luffy was quick, but anxious. Sengoku's face was shaking. He really wanted to punch these two guys to death, but thinking of the background behind each other, he hesitated again at this moment. It's okay to kill Ace, it's a sure thing, but Luffy. Garp's attitude is already obvious. If something happened to the Straw Hat Boy, I'm afraid this brother would have nothing to do. But at this moment, a jailer standing beside him suddenly stretched out his hand and handed Luffy a key. The key is here. Luffy looked up blankly, but almost before hesitating and thinking, he took the key. Ace was also stunned, glanced at the jailer, and then saw the key, and couldn't help but startled. Are the keys made of candles? Without any hesitation or suspicion, Luffy immediately inserted the key into the shackles and gave it a sharp turn. Crack. The clear sound of the shackles being opened came out, and it was this sound that completely woke Sengoku. Quote question mark question mark question mark question mark quote. It was too late for him to think about why a traitor who handed out the key at this critical moment was mixed in with the jailer, and his whole body suddenly flashed with golden light. You are too reckless. Straw Hat. Luffy. Sengoku roared, the golden light flickered, and his body swelled up quickly. In a few breaths, he was like a huge golden Buddha, his right hand clenched into a fist. His legs jumped high, and he suddenly punched down. Luffy's face changed, he took a deep breath, and his body was inflated like a balloon. Boom. A deafening sound came, the execution platform collapsed directly, and Luffy and others also fell from the execution platform with this punch. Immediately after the next second. Chi 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 chi. Thick white smoke rose from below, followed by a flame, which quickly enlarged, expanded, and agitated in a matter of seconds. Luffy, you guy, you're still so uneasy. Ha 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 ha. In the flames and white fog, two loud voices came out. Ace, Marco and the others were shocked, and they were all overjoyed. Chapter 192 What kind of world is this? Marineford. Exciting scenes are being staged, from the appearance of the Whitebeard Pirates until the world's strongest man stands there forever and loses his breath. Fire Fist Ace was finally rescued, and this scene excited the entire Whitebeard Pirates. Great. Ace was rescued. Quick, everyone escorts Ace and his younger brother to retreat. Our mission has been accomplished, and everyone is ready to retreat. Mark's eyes flashed with joy, but when he saw the figure standing on the ice, his expression became solemn. Although Ace was rescued, Dad stayed here forever. Moreover, he is still not sure where the end of this war will go. His eyes shifted slightly, and Marco stared at the figure surrounded by Marines. No one knows whether the man will continue to shoot. Then, Marco looked elsewhere. 3 Marine Admiral, showing horns, stand in different positions on the battlefield. He knew very well that until the moment of the battle, these 3 people were far from taking serious shots and showing their true combat effectiveness. It was also at this moment that Jang Lu grinned as he scanned the entire battlefield. Whitebeard's exit has undoubtedly made the morale of the entire pirate group extremely low, and now everyone is just holding on. The rescue of Ace also cheered them up, but the improvement in morale was still limited. They are all very clear that when they are trapped in the enemy's camp, the contrast between the combat effectiveness of the two sides is so obvious. It is one thing to be rescued, but another to escape. Freya. Jang Lu suddenly laughed. Sir. Freya hurriedly Kaido. Her tone was a little nervous, she already felt a different atmosphere. Promi, Bagu and others around her all had solemn expressions, and there was a faint murderous intent. It's time for us to talk to the world. Zhang Lu said softly, extending his right hand. Freya took a deep breath and immediately handed a small phone bug. This is the megaphone bug that amplifies the sound and spreads throughout Marineford. At the same time, with the help of others, a projection phone bug was quietly placed in front of Zhang Lu. This strange scene immediately attracted the attention of many people, making them turn their attention here. What is he going to do? Garp. Crane looked gloomy, came behind Garp, asked in a deep voice, his eyes dignified. Advertisement. I have no idea, Garp said lightly. His face was not very good at the moment, there was even some bruises on his cheeks, and he was punched hard by his own grandson, which of course would not make him very happy. At the same time, they are also worried about the rescued Ace and Luffy. The situation seems to be improving for his grandchildren, but it means that a more dangerous time has come. In Marineford, the fall of Whitebeard meant that Marine was stronger. How could you not know? Crane Vice Admiral frowned. He's going to save Ace, but what he's going to do, I don't know. At this point, Garp didn't want to hide anything anymore. Because in his heart, he has already faintly noticed that perhaps an even greater disaster is coming. I have a very strong foreboding, Crane Vice Admiral said in a deep voice. In the square not far from here, next to the ruins of the execution platform, Sengoku's whole body shone with golden light, and it had transformed into a huge Buddha statue. Buddha of Sengoku. As the Marine Marshal, although he has the title of the resourceful general, his strength is not weak, even powerful. Otherwise, it would not have been possible to assume the position of the previous admiral. Zhang Lu. But don't go to the situation I thought it was. Muttering, Sengoku's face became more and more solemn. Deep down, he would rather face Whitebeard than this guy Zhang Lu. Look there, what exactly is Zhang Lu going to do? In the Whitebeard camp, Diamond Yoja suddenly said loudly, pointing to where Zhang Lu was talking. Then, their eyes narrowed. This is. The team led by Zhang Lu is completely separated from Marine who is beside him. The hostility is quite obvious, what is going on here? The naked eye can clearly see that the recruit group led by Zhang Lu suddenly moved at this moment, broke away from the Marine team, and came not far from the pirate camp. Equally shocked and puzzled was Marine. Everyone be on guard. Don't act rashly, the other party doesn't make a move, we must restrain. Damn, what the hell is going on? Advertisement. Why is Zhang Lu Admirals recruit group so hostile to us? Who can tell me what's going on right now? On the faces of the Marines, there was confusion and doubt, as well as a trace of nervousness. Defeat Whitebeard, Zhang Lu of Pluton Rayleigh, they are really reluctant to fight each other. But at this moment, the eerie atmosphere that pervaded Marineford, silently, was telling a different situation. My colleagues, friends, and Marine brothers. I'm Zhang Lu. Suddenly, Zhang Lu spoke to the phone bug with a smile, and the voice spread all over Marineford and all over the world in an instant. It has been nearly 30 years since I came to this world. I've been thinking, brooding. What kind of world is this? Marine guards his own peace for the justice he follows in his heart, benevolent. When the words came to the back, they became icy cold. This is the hypocrisy of Marine. I still remember 20 years ago, on that sunny day, the peaceful Ohara, covered in relentless fire. Justice is an excuse for covering up, servile, subservient, all kinds of darkness, deeds, and murderous incidents. Will destroy the capital of scholars, Ohara, and slaughter defenseless civilians. Remember the old man, the cry of despair, the young child, who fell to the ground by the merciless bullet. Having said this, Zhang Lu laughed. The Marine who maintains world peace, does justice, and protects civilians, will do things for celestial dragons. In the name of justice, doing the things of Asura, such a Marine makes me wake up. Ha 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 ha. But one day, I suddenly discovered that everyone turned out to be wrong. Yes, the answer is very unexpected, whether it is Marine or pirate, it turns out that everyone is wrong. The benevolent people in power are sometimes more fearful and trembling than the murderous pirates. Zhang Lu sighed lightly, a touch of complexity and memory appeared on his face. There was a touch of ridicule and disdain on Zhang Lu's face, which appeared in front of everyone in the world. Pirates rushed to the sea for their enthusiasm, ambition, or dream. It makes me sick too. Shame. It seems that neither side has made a big mistake, just follow their heart's choice. Chapter 193 I don't like this world. Zhang Lu. Sengoku's complexion has changed drastically. This remark made him have a very bad premonition. Between his words, the questioning of Marine, the irony of justice, is more biting than any behavior or words. Marine, are you following justice, or some guy's order? Ha ha, let's be more direct. The so-called Marine, their justice, is world conquest, justice of the celestial dragons. And what kind of people are the celestial dragons? Zhang Lu's words continued, and the contempt in his expression was not concealed in the face of the whole world. The nobles of the world. 20 people who created the world, the descendants of the king. We might as well use mobs to describe them, but it will be more accurate. Such words caused the complexion of countless people at the scene to change greatly. Some people's eyes were shocked, some people's pupils were constricted, some people were shaking all over, and the light in some people's eyes turned into a frenzy. To the face of the world, calling celestial dragons a moth and Marine a lackey of celestial dragons. Perhaps, Zhang Lu is the only one. What is he going to do? Foil Beasta said suspiciously. I don't know, but just based on these words, even if he beat Dad, Zhonglu is still an admirable man. With such words, I'm afraid he won't be able to stay in the marine, right? Then, wouldn't we have one less terrifying enemy? Look at him first, what are you going to do? Among the Whitebeard pirates, whispered discussions rang out. At the same time, the whole world is also boiling. There was a spectacular scene where Zhonglu fought against Whitebeard and finally won. Now, there are Marines who openly despise Marine, world government, celestial dragons. Such a bizarre reversal undoubtedly subverted many people's original thoughts, and also made them feel nervous and excited. Does he want to convict Marine? Be a pirate, someone shouted so loudly, and instantly aroused the approval of countless people. Since you hate Marine, there is no doubt that pirates are a good place to go. He's right, Marine, to uphold justice for the celestial dragons. The Ohara incident, the actions of the Sabayati archipelago to protect those celestial dragons, are vivid in my eyes. Maybe some of them, like Zhonglu Admiral, are defending the interests of the common people, but they still can't cover up, they defend evil behaviors. Advertisement. Some people shouted excitedly. In a town, in the crowd around the huge screen, a black-haired woman shed tears silently in her eyes, but her face showed a contrasting smile and expectation. Have you finally come this far? Zhonglu, Ohara, I will always support you and stand behind you. Thank you very much, really appreciate everything you have done for Ohara. In Marineford, Zhonglu's words continued, and the corners of his mouth curved into an arc. Speaking of this, some people may think, don't I want to be a Marine? Going to be a pirate? Hee, some of this idea is right, and some is wrong. Marine, I really don't want to do it. As soon as these words came out, the entire Marineford was completely boiled, and countless Marines widened their eyes, shocked their hearts, and shouted excitedly. Who is Day Tiger Zhonglu? It can be said that from the time of its appearance, it has been a symbol of Marine. Although the entire Marineford, a month ago, rumors began to spread, but it still could not hide the great contribution of the other party to Marine, as well as its terrifying reputation and appeal in Marine. But I'm not going to be a pirate either. Marine is hypocritical justice, so what about pirates? Some guys set sail with their dreams as their goal. They pursue the truth, go to the sea, and are magnanimous and worthy of respect. But some guys are also unforgivable villains. Call. With that said, Zhonglu grinned in front of the whole world and everyone in Marineford. What kind of world is this? Humans, Murlocs, fur clans, long-necked clans, giant clans, little people clans, etc., although they have different skins and different appearances, but in essence, they are all members of the whole world, all human beings. Quote. But discrimination, contempt, arrogance, and hunting are going on all the time with the acquiescence of some people. How sad. I don't like this world. Zhonglu's voice suddenly became heavy, sonorous and powerful, echoing in everyone's ears and throughout Marineford, making everyone's heart tremble. So, I'm going to change it. Celestial Dragons aloof, has the so-called world government of more than 300 countries in the world. I want to see what kind of stuff you are all about. I will declare war with you here in Marineford, at the end of this battle with Whitebeard, at the top. Advertisement. I will overthrow you and reshape a new world. Cold, powerful words spread out. Whirring. There was a sudden gale of wind blowing over Marineford, and silence fell. The whole world, at this moment, seems to have been pressed the pause button, and there is no sound. What the hell is he talking about? Come on, are you kidding me? Such words. I don't know why. These words stopped in my ears, even more real than Whitebeard's one-piece sentence, and it made my blood boil. There is a feeling in my heart, just follow him. I can't hold back the ardent thought. That's what a man is. Shocked. The whole world is shocked by Zhonglu on the screen at this moment. This speech is not too long, but it stimulates everyone's heart to beat violently, making people's blood boil. Declaring war on the world government and celestial dragons, in front of the whole world, what kind of courage is this? Rocks. His strength is far less than the rocks of the past. As expected, his ambitions even surpass rocks. It's really a situation you don't want to face. Ha, Marineford. Call. Akainu's eyes were cold and he let out a sneer. Say 1,000 and 10,000, but he's just Marine's traitor. Your life will also come to an end today. In front of the ruins of the execution platform, Sengoku clenched his fists, his face was gloomy, and he was extremely angry, and suddenly let out a loud roar. Zhonglu, the arrogant and ignorant child, he will soon know how ignorant and ridiculous his thoughts are. Trouble, the old man's heart is trembling with fear. A flash of light flashed across the Kizaru sunglasses, and a small sigh came out. Aokiji slowly exhaled a white breath, his face was solemn, and his eyes were staring at the figure not far away. Do you know what you're talking about? Generations of so-called kings have fallen, but the world government still exists. The old voice sounded, and inside the palace, a chilling aura swept past like a gust of wind. Mariajoy, in the splendid and gorgeous palace, an old laughter suddenly came out. Chapter 194. In Marineford, a dramatic plot development is underway. Code-named Day Tiger, the former Marine Admiral Zhonglu, actually said such a remark in front of the whole world, and I have to say that everyone was shocked. At the same time, their hearts were also touched. Sengoku, I know very well what I'm saying at the moment, what it means. Zhonglu smiled in response to Sengoku's loud shouting question. Are you going to fight Marine here? Sengoku's face was gloomy, his fists clenched, and he shouted in a deep voice. His eyes were also sharp at the moment, and he had already paid attention to all Zhonglu's movements. The Marine Intelligence Department, the World CP organization, will continuously summarize its relevant information every day. At this moment, Sengoku had expected, but did not expect to come so quickly, and, in the midst of this war. I have to say that the other party is really cunning. In the face of such a large-scale war, in front of the whole world, doing such a thing can indeed spread its influence to the limit. In other words, Zhonglu had a plan for a long time, and the moment in front of him was within his plan. Defeat Whitebeard, save Ace, and declare your position in front of the world. Is everything your plan? It's terrifying. Sengoku's eyes flickered, and he said silently in his heart. But unfortunately, I have already deduced the scene in front of me, and I am fully prepared. Everything you think about, you will only usher in failure. With eyes fixed on Zhonglu, Sengoku spoke again. Have you really thought about it? You will have a fight with Whitebeard. Even if the appearance is not damaged, the consumption will never be small. And here, Marineford, the world's largest and most heavily defended fortress. You may not be able to get out of here. As his icy, serious words spread out, a gust of wind suddenly swept through Marineford. Many Marine vice-admiral, with grim faces, acted silently. They are very clear about their identities and responsibilities. Even if their former friends suddenly become enemies, they will not hesitate to carry out their tasks. The three admirals who were standing in different places all stared at Zhonglu at this moment, and took their own steps. This moment is what should have happened. The eradication of Whitebeard, coupled with such a scene, can be said to be the perfect ending. Akainu sneered. Advertisement. Before the war, he took on the task from the world government, and it was after the war that he solved Zhonglu. At this moment, the situation suddenly changed, which was extremely beneficial to this task. You don't even need to find excuses. The magma all over his body rattled, and Akainu's footsteps quickened. Compared to Whitebeard, what he wanted to deal with was undoubtedly the man in front of him. New and old grudges, fierce together, can be completely resolved today. Why, even if the war is over, it would be nice to leave quietly. Aokiji sighed, and the icy chill spread from his body, filling the entire Marineford. There's no way, Zhonglu Admiral, although you and I have a good personal relationship, but in such a public place, as Marine, I have to take action against you. Kizaru's eyes flickered and he said softly. In his heart, he had a strong premonition that Zhonglu's strength would definitely not be just the single person he looked at the moment, and his recruit group. Garp. The golden Buddha light flickered, and Sengoku leapt high and came to Garp's side. Such a scene, you should have had a hunch. Tell me your choice. Serious, even with a slightly nervous tone, at this moment, Sengoku has a very serious attitude towards his old friend. Garp was shocked, looking at Ace and Luffy who were running fast ahead, breaking through, and looked at the figure in the center of the world, under the sight of countless people. Call. After taking a deep breath, he slowly stood up. Aside from not being able to take action against my own family, I'm still a Marine after all, Sengoku. These short words made Sengoku let out a long sigh of relief, and his heart was much relieved. Then, today, join forces to take down Zhonglu. Garp is silent. Emotionally speaking, he is reluctant to do this, but his position makes him suffer all the time. At the same time, in a certain corner of the battlefield, a purple-haired, burly figure with sunglasses was silently watching here. Mr. Zephyr, Zhonglu Admiral, sentenced Marine. Ai Yin said in a deep voice, staring at the figure in the field with inexplicable excitement and anticipation. Yeah, he finally took that step. It's for Ace, and it's also for himself. After a pause, Zephyr nodded and sighed. This may be the most suitable path for him. Bins, who had always stood there quietly, spoke solemnly at this time. Advertisement. But, Zhonglu Admiral, how to get out of Marineford? This is naval headquarters after all. Although the battle with the Whitebeard Pirates caused heavy losses, the top combat power has almost no contribution. The number of elites is nearly 7 or 80,000. Zephyr was silent when he heard the words, his eyes flickered and his eyes were solemn. Watch quietly, he will not fight an unprepared battle. What's more, it is such a battle against the whole world. Sabayati Archipelago, Ant Shao ripped off in the bar. Boom. The dull sound of the wine glass slamming on the table slammed hard on the table, causing everyone else beside him to look sideways. Looking at the man on the screen, the words just now echoed in his ears, a smile appeared on the corner of Rayleigh's mouth, and a light flashed through his glasses. Whitebeard is down, is it your place? Zhonglu. What a selfish, domineering guy. Ha 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 ha. Zhonglu's right fist pierced the air, swung it down, and roared. Looking at the densely surrounded heads in front of him, a smile appeared on his face, and he slowly raised his right hand. Roar. This is reincarnation. Bagu, Chrome, Orbis and others all pulled out their weapons suddenly, raised them to the sky, and shouted loudly. Inside Marineford, the situation on the battlefield changed inexplicably. The densely packed Marine is not only encircling the Whitebeard Pirates at this moment, but also treats the recruit group led by Zhonglu as an enemy. The arrest of Zhonglu is a matter of Marine's dignity. Today, he must not be allowed to leave Marineford. Chilling, icy breath swept across Marineford. He suddenly raised his head and laughed loudly, causing Ant Shao at the bar to look away and look at him. The old era is over, and the new era is coming. Suddenly, There was a loud roar. Bros. And Fire Fist Ace, the rest of the Whitebeard Pirates, none of them can be spared. Since it is an enemy, there is no need to be polite. FK it. The roar resounded in the air at this moment. In the recruit group, Jang L stood at the forefront. Chapter 195 debut at this moment. FKU. A high-pitched shout resounded above Marineford. Marine hadn't taken the initiative to attack, but the recruit group was already full of momentum, shouting such slogans brutally. They're also the only Marines that don't use justice as a slogan, but instead talk about F******************. The recruit group is attacking. Stop them. Quick. Don't take it lightly. This is the most elite and powerful bandit army in naval headquarters 20 years ago. It's Admiral's guard. Marine also roared, shouting and charging as well. Marco and others, at this time, can be said to be confused, and the momentary change of the situation made them a little unable to react. Whitebeard Pirates. At this moment, Jang L's voice suddenly came. Marco, Diamond Yoja, Foil Beasta and others all raised their heads and looked at the place where the figure was. Between me and Newgate, it's a fight between men. This battle is also our unfinished battle 20 years ago. It's an upright, fighting battle. I respect him, and he respects me as well. The voice echoed in the ears, and everyone in the Whitebeard Pirates' eyes flashed and their faces were heavy. Anyway, Dad fell in the duel. I'm going to rescue Ace. Jang L's words came again, and many people's eyes flashed. No matter what happens in the future, now, I hope we can join forces to deal with Marine. This is also the only way out for you. The battlefield was silent, and Sengoku's expression became even more solemn, and his expression was full of icy coldness. Once the remaining remnants of the Whitebeard Pirates are united with Jang L, it will be an extremely difficult force to deal with. Even if Marine wins today, it will pay a huge price. But to his relief, Marco and the others did not respond. The death of their father obviously made them unable to let go. Ace, is that uncle coming toward you too? Did he convict Marine for you? Luffy asked loudly while dodging his attacks. Who knows? All I know is that Lousy can't understand what that guy did. Ace growled. At this moment, the jailer who had just handed the key overthrew the hat on his head and ran after them. He is indeed saving you, Fire Fist Ace. I was arranged by your side to save you at a critical moment. This sentence shocked Ace, and glanced at the man with a complicated expression. Damn it, advertisement. He gritted his teeth. Marco and others are also hesitating. Listen to him, Marco. Suddenly, an old voice came, which made Marco and the others tremble. Father. They were very familiar with this voice, and it was from Dad. Immediately afterwards, Marco looked at the battlefield, the figure that was still standing until this moment. Dad just stood there quietly, as if dead, but the voice was clearly his. Breakthrough. Suddenly, a unique burst of laughter spread across the battlefield. Marco and the others stared, and saw Brother Doflamingo, wearing a pink feather coat and sunglasses, was already standing beside Dad. Brother Doflamingo, what are you doing? Diamond Yoja roared. The voice of the old man just heard is not an illusion, but exactly what he heard. Work with Jang L and get out of here. I am dead, but I can talk to you. As for the reason, maybe it's time to ask Jang L. The familiar voice sounded again, and Marco and the others were shocked and looked at each other, seeing the shock and surprise in each other's eyes. No matter what the situation is, it is undoubtedly worthy of joy and excitement. Just get out of here, rescue Ace, and then explore Dad's condition. Okay, we'll join you, Jang L. I hope you can give us a reasonable explanation after you leave here. Marco gritted his teeth and roared loudly. When Jang L heard this, a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Then, the cooperation is reached. Immediately afterwards, angry roars erupted one after another in the battlefield. Flamingo, what are you doing? Gecko Moria, stop me. They're moving Whitebeard's body. There are Marines and pirates, all anxious and angry. Breakthrough. You ask what I'm doing. I actually don't understand, but the order he gave was to collect the corpse. Doflamingo grinned. The right hand moved slightly, and when I saw Whitebeard's huge body, it was humming, and it was pulled by the thin line between his fingers. This is Whitebeard's corpse. It's still so intact, if it can be stuffed into the shadow of a strong man. Advertisement. Then, what a powerful puppet zombie will I get? Moria also stood aside, dancing and saying, hey, it's better to put your mind on it, Moria. This is that person's goal. If you make any mistake, your life will disappear in this world. I'm looking for you to do this because of your professionalism, otherwise, you won't have the chance to be reborn again. When Brother Doflamingo heard the words, the smile on his face disappeared immediately, and his words came cold. I will not. Moria froze in her heart and said quickly. His eyes flickered, recalling what the other party said not long ago when he found him. Gecko Moria, you have already thought about your end after this war, right? Yes, the world government will expel you from the Shichibukai ranks and execute you. But you still have a chance to live and be reborn, as long as you cooperate with me. Kaido of the New World, more power, and hope for the light, you will be able to have it again. He didn't want to die, so he chose to cooperate with Doflamingo, and this was the scene just now. In Summit War, Marine and the pirates all collected Whitebeard's body under the noses of everyone. This is undoubtedly a very risky thing. On the other side, in front of Jang L, above his head. 8-foot Changgu Jade. Intensive laser light immediately covered it and penetrated to Zhang Lu. Boom. Go to hell with Whitebeard. Brother Doflamingo opened his arms and laughed. Are you alone? The Void Knight Palace is here. Even with the remnants of the Whitebeard Pirates, how could they be our opponents? A battle with Whitebeard, even he's exhausted. Kizaru's eyes flickered, and he muttered. Over Marineford, golden light suddenly shone, and a huge golden arc was suspended there at some point in time. But it's not that easy, it can be solved. On it, there are powerful and extraordinary figures, which cannot be clearly seen under the sunlight, but the breath of each person makes everyone feel shocked. Breakthrough. With a deafening explosion, Zhang Lu's figure was engulfed by flames and explosions and disappeared from everyone's eyes. When the words fell, Zhang Lu slowly raised his head and looked at the sky in front of him. The burning flame suddenly fluttered, and Zhang Lu stepped out with a faint smile on his face. Akainu's icy voice sounded. You guys are finally here. These words, you may be wrong, Sakazuki. Now, you are fighting alone, Zhang Lu. Chapter 196 The Second Legend. Over Marineford, the strong wind was hunting, blowing the robes behind everyone. Under the sun, the golden boat shone brightly, and one after another figure reflected in everyone's eyes. Are they from Zhang Lu Admiral? When? He already had such a team. Who are these guys? The light is so dazzling that I can't see clearly at all. Everyone was shocked, staring at the golden ship suspended in the sky. The invisible majesty, diffused from the ship at this moment, made everyone feel palpitations. Zhang Lu grinned, he tore off the cloak of justice behind him, and threw it to one side. Boring and hypocritical justice will never be needed again. Muttering, he looked down at the battlefield ahead, and his eyes gradually sharpened. Freya, can you still accept the change of identity at this moment? Follow me and leave Marine together. Turning his head, Zhang Lu said to Freya, who was nervous and trembling not far away. Such a battlefield and the current situation had a huge impact on Freya, the female Marine. Hearing the voice, Freya raised her head and nodded. Wherever you go, you are my commander, and Freya looks forward to you. Zhang Lu laughed and glanced at the three admirals in front of him. Everyone, relax your heart. He pulled out the long sword from his waist, and pointed it at the far opposite. Sakazuki with a gloomy face slowly spit out plain but domineering words. In front of us, there is absolutely no opponent. Roar. During the battlefield, a deafening roar sounded, and the recruit group was completely excited at this moment, even the Whitebeard Pirates became restless. The golden ship suspended in the sky, the figures standing on it, the momentum is absolutely extraordinary, but the specific identity cannot be confirmed now. Suddenly, above the sky, a figure in the golden boat suddenly jumped down. Gia ha 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 ha. A unique loud laughter sounded, a long golden hair like a lion's mane flew up, two long knives were slung around his waist, and he was wearing golden clothes. Domineering, unruly, uninhibited laughter spread throughout Marineford at this moment. It's finally here, old friends. Long time no see. Sengoku, Garp, you should be very happy to see the old man alive, right? Advertisement. And this world, we finally meet again. The sun was shining, and the figure with the loud laughter was finally seen by everyone at this moment, and it also caused countless people's pupils to shrink at this moment, and their expressions changed greatly. It's him, one of the three great legends in the world. Former Admiral of the Air Pirates, Golden Lion Shiki. A loud cry of shock came out at this moment, and instantly resounded through Marineford. Whether it was Marine or pirate, at this moment, their hearts were shaking and their eyes widened. The figure that jumped from the golden boat surprised countless people and shocked them even more. At the same time, on the walls on both sides of the Gate of Justice, Marine, who was responsible for guarding here, shrank his pupils and his whole body was shaking. Warning, warning, warning. A large number of pirate groups are approaching, and a large number of pirate ships are heading towards Marineford. Look at the flag, it's the Golden Lion Pirates that once disappeared from the world. On Marineford Square, listening to the information constantly being reported in his ears, Sengoku's expression became extremely solemn. His eyes stared at Zhang Lu, and his heart sank to the bottom. This man is really scary. I don't know when he actually united with Golden Lion Shiki, one of the three legendary pirates. In that era, there was no exact ranking of the three legendary pirates, they existed side by side. One Piece Roger, Whitebeard Edward Newgate, and Golden Lion Shiki. They have fought each other countless times, winning and losing, and in one famous battle, Roger was nearly wiped out by the Golden Lion Shiki, completely wiped out. It can be said that Golden Lion Shiki is definitely a formidable opponent. Long time no see. Everyone, I'll give you a welcome gift. Gia ha 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 ha. Amidst the loud laughter, the falling Golden Lion suddenly hooked his hands. Buzz. The void seemed to tremble at this moment, and then, the Marines were stunned and raised their heads abruptly. Why is it getting dark? No, it's not that it's dark, but something in the sky is falling fast. Damn, such a large range, what is that? Visible to the naked eye, the position directly above the head was quickly covered by a huge shadow, and the shadow was expanding at a very fast speed, blocking the sunlight. That is, advertisement. Not good. Sengoku and Garp's expressions changed, both of them were expecting something. Sure enough, after just 3 seconds, a huge shadow emerged, covering the square of Marineford, the huge warships on which Marines' corpses were piled, stained with Madara's bloodline. The strong impact even drove the air, so that the falling warships were all at the tip, with a twisted airflow and ripples. Get out of the way. The roar sounded, but it was too late. There were at least 40 or 50 warships that fell from a height of 10,000 meters, covering a radius of thousands of meters, and their destructive power and impact were not weaker than meteorites. Boom boom boom. The continuous explosions came out, and countless warships fell and bombarded, causing the Marines to scream in agony, and a gloom in their hearts. How's it going, Sengoku, Garp, and the long-lost Marines? Am I still satisfied with this meeting ceremony? With his feet firmly on the ice, Golden Lion Shiki grinned. It's never like you guys who are just starting out, thinking that with some achievements and a low reputation, you can surpass our fellows and be on a par. I like the look on your face at the moment, and the shocked, blank look on your face. Taking a deep breath, the golden hair danced wildly behind Golden Lion and roared loudly. Looks like we're going to do it too, Garp. Golden Lion laughed. I'm so sorry. Some people say that legend means disappearing and falling behind the times. Shiki, legends are legends. Jia ha 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 ha. Sengoku's face was ashen, and his eyes were full of solemnity. But I'm here right now to tell you. After these words fell, Golden Lion's expression became dull. It's not for you to surpass it in just a few decades, a dozen years. Garp nodded. I didn't expect that Zhonglu even invited him to move. After a pause, Golden Lion grinned again, his eyes were sharp, and he looked straight ahead. Laozi is here again. This old man spends his whole life making legends. Chapter 197 All Debut. The domineering, uninhibited old voice echoed throughout Marineford, making Marines look dignified and nervous. There is no doubt that Golden Lion Shiki is a figure of the same rank as Whitebeard. Moreover, appearing as Zhonglu's accomplices also put a lot of pressure on all Marines. Who would have thought that the little Marineford would be baptized by two legendary pirates in one day? Boom. Some people even swallowed a mouthful of saliva trembling all over. Zhonglu's accomplice turned out to be Golden Lion. So, what about the others? Someone suddenly asked. Yes, there are more than one figure standing on the golden boat. The one who jumped first was the Golden Lion, so who are the others? What kind of identity do you have? From today, you don't need to wear this mask anymore. The golden ship was extended, the sand fluttered, and a low voice came out, and Crocodile took off the mask on his face, revealing his true face. It's an honor to be a part of such a grand event. Slowly exhaling, Crocodile jumped off the golden ship, his robes trembled, and fell down shortly after, standing beside Golden Lion Shiki. I saw a lot of familiar faces. Eyes narrowed, Crocodile spit out the circles under his eyes and grinned. It's the former Shichibukai, Sir Crocodile who was locked up in Impel Down. The Marines' expressions changed when they saw him. Breakthrough. Doflamingo also laughed at this time, and he was standing to the left of Golden Lion Shiki, next to Gecko Moria. The world should be shocked by this scene, right? Immediately afterwards, a roar of thunder sounded in the sky, and the blue electric arc shot up suddenly, swooped down, and landed next to Brother Doflamingo, drawing a cross-legged suspension in the void, tilting his head and looking at the figure in front of him. Who is that guy? The Marines were dazed and puzzled. They don't know this figure with long earlobes and thunder and lightning all over his body, but looking at his strength, I'm afraid it's not ordinary. The one who shot me at Sabayati Archipelago. Logia Thunder Fruit abilities. A flash of light flashed on Kizaru's sunglasses, and he squinted. If you can intercept yourself, it can be said that the strength of the opponent will not be weaker than the Admiral level, at least you can entangle them. Advertisement. Another figure jumped down. No, it's two. After a while, another exclamation sounded. A figure appeared on the ice, with an aquiline nose and a white dove standing on his shoulders, and his body was filled with a strong, dark, icy aura. On the other hand, he looked a little excited and looked like a fox. Traitor of CP9, Rob Lucci. Also, is that guy Foxy, the captain of the Silver Fox Pirates? The appearance of these two figures was immediately recognized by the Marines, all with serious faces. I said, I'll be back again. And, it is the gesture that will make you look up. Rob Lucci stood there quietly, he seemed taciturn, and after scanning a circle, he stared at a group of people in a corner between the battlefields, and said lightly. His keen sense made him realize that the other party was someone with the same attributes as him, that is to say, the world government had already arranged the fighting force to be hidden on this battlefield. Haha, interesting, this traitor of CP9, I haven't seen him for a while, but he has grown a lot. In the corner, a man wearing a black suit and a top hat sneered. On the other side, Sengoku looked gloomy. He stared at the figures on the ice with a solemn heart. Even Shichibukai, unknowingly, was included under his command. When exactly is it? Garp also looked surprised. Golden Lion Shiki, Crocodile, Doflamingo, Gecko Moria, these guys, have they all cooperated with him? I'm afraid it's not just a partnership, Garp. Sengoku said in a deep voice. A fight with this guy Newgate, how are you, boss? Crocodile grinned suddenly and laughed loudly. Best ever. Zhonglu responded with a smile. After a pause, he looked in the direction of Fire Fist Ace and Luffy again, and suddenly said. It's just that the family's private affairs will be bothered you to take care of for a while. Crocodile's mouth curled up, and he exhaled a puff of smoke. It's a trivial matter, I'll take them out of here. Then, everyone. Zhonglu's eyes flashed, and he stared at Akainu who was stepping forward, covered in lava, and his eyes were sharp. Advertisement. Find your opponent and fight our first war. The next second, his feet moved, turning into a streamer and rushing out. Akainu also had a ghastly face, the magma formed out of the outline, and rushed over with a roar. But it's just a combination of some old, weak, sick, and defeated soldiers who were defeated by Marine. Where did you get the courage, Jang Lu? The merciless ridicule came out of his mouth, making Jang Lu grin and his eyes turned cold. Your mouth still stinks as always. Sakazuki. The long knife shook, wrapped in armament hockey, and then collided with its magma fist, making a deafening explosion. Gu dong dong. The magma surged, dripping onto the ice, and immediately burned and vaporized into a large white mist. On the other side, Kizaru pulled both hands, Tiankong Yunjian emerged from his hand, and then his body turned into a golden light, and rushed towards Jang Lu. But before his figure came, he suddenly stagnated there, because at some point in front of him, there was already a figure wrapped in thunder and lightning. Crack. Biting off a third of the apple in one bite, Enel turned the stick in his hand, pointed forward, and grinned. You were lucky to be picked by this god. A flash of light flashed on Kizaru's sunglasses. It's scary, that's my honor. In the next second, a thunder and lightning flashed in the air, a golden light slashed and collided fiercely. After a slight pause, there were countless thunders and lightnings, the lights interlaced, collided, and exploded a series of flames. On the other side of the battlefield, Aokiji's footsteps also stopped. Looks like you've already decided your original camp, brother Doflamming. Staring slightly, Aokiji let out a breath and said lightly. That's not much of a change, Aokiji Admiral. After all, I'm not one of your Marines. And Jang Lu is my dear uncle. Doflamingo grinned. His hands and 5 fingers were open, suddenly trembling, the sharp line had cut through Aokiji's neck at some point, and his eyes were startled, his head separated from his body, and fell heavily on the ice, breaking into a pile of ice. It seems. We originally underestimated your strength. You're hiding deep. The ice cubes reassembled and turned into Aokiji's figure, and solemn words came out of his mouth. Advertisement Chapter 198 Sand Waterfall Burial. Hide. Doflamingo raised his eyebrows, a flash of light flashed across his sunglasses, and he grinned. You have no idea what kind of power Jang Lu uncle possesses. He can change the world. The figure flashed, his 5 fingers spread out, and the transparent lines intertwined quickly, covering his right hand, and then, Aokiji, who was waving the ice saber in front of him, grasped it. Boom. The ice saber was blocked by Doflamingo. The two collided head-on, and a circle of air waves spread out, and the icy cold air instantly invaded, hitting brother Doflamingo's arm. That's amazing, Doflamingo. You have more power than anyone could have imagined. Aokiji praised again, with a solemn look in his eyes. The opponent caught the blow of his sharp ice saber with his bare hands. What surprised him even more was that the guy in front of him might have been able to compete with him in terms of strength. This is undoubtedly a very shocking thing. Because this is beyond Marine's information on Shichibukai, the master. Crack. Senhan's white air covered brother Doflamingo in the blink of an eye, freezing it into a humanoid sculpture. But soon, Aokiji saw the frozen person through the ice cubes shining with colorful misty colors, and a strange arc was drawn at the corner of his mouth. Crack. Immediately afterwards, countless lines bloomed in the void, Aokiji's pupils shrank, and his figure suddenly retreated. I don't know how many sharp lines slashed through the air, directly cutting out countless cracks on the ice surface under my feet. The ice cubes that had frozen Doflamingo were also shattered. Breakthrough. What a powerful force. I can't help but want to release it. The smile on his face could no longer be restrained. Brother Doflamingo stepped forward and said loudly with a grin. Before the change, he couldn't easily compete with the Admiral-level powerhouse, and even launched a counterattack, fighting back and forth. The power that Jang Lu uncle gave him is something he has cultivated for many years, which he may not be able to control. It is also an absolutely powerful skill. It has been entangled in a group of forces that people can't ignore. That guy Jang Lu. Aokiji looked serious, holding an ice saber in his right hand, and his eyes were fixed on the enemy in front of him. He thought he could solve the opponent quickly, but at present, it seems that this is likely to develop into a protracted war. He will shake the world. Marine Admiral Aokiji, you will see the most shocking scene of your life next. Advertisement. Enjoy this visual feast. Breakthrough. A deep laughter came from brother Doflamingo's mouth, and his footsteps abruptly stepped out, stepping on the ice in front of him. Clatter. It was like a pebble that fell into the calm lake. The next moment, ripples appeared on the entire ice surface. Immediately afterwards, there was a humming shock, and white light was born, which turned into thousands of white silk threads, which suddenly rushed into the air in an instant, intertwined and intertwined. Because, it's not just me. Everyone who stands with me will show the power that will shock you. In the laughter, brother Doflamingo shook his hands suddenly. Shish. In an instant, countless white lines turned into ferocious white snakes, piercing the air, driving a huge airflow sound, and rushing towards Aokiji. The speed and impact all reached the ultimate at this moment, which made Aokiji feel a shock in his heart. Boom. It was just a slight touch, a test, his hands turned into ice chips, and his body was rushed out hundreds of meters. Then soon, countless white snakes came flying again. A tangled white thread wrapped in thick armament hockey. This stance is not weaker than Logia's attack range, is the fruit awakening. Scary guy. Muttering in his heart, Aokiji flickered again and again, running on the ice, avoiding the white snake chasing him. The ice surface was turning into white lines at a speed visible to the naked eye, and ripples were swaying wherever Doflamingo stepped. Breakthrough. Who can stop us? How can there be an opponent in front of us? What about Marine? What about world government? What about celestial dragons aloof? One day, you will all be broken by us one by one. Doflamingo's fingers trembled, controlling the lines, chasing after Aokiji. The Marines affected by one side all screamed in pain, were pierced by thin wires, bursting with blood, or they were entangled by thick snake-like wires and strangled to death. The moves under Zhonglu's enhancement are now extremely powerful, and the entire inner bay is turning into a white ocean at an extremely fast speed. Don Quixote Doflamingo. He is so powerful that even Aokiji Admiral was forced to retreat. It's incredible. What happened between the battlefields made many Marines wide-eyed and felt incredible. Advertisement. Shocked. Accident. This is just the beginning. Doflamingo laughed. Aokiji slapped forward with both hands, and shouted coldly, Ice Age. In the next second, the biting cold air burst out and turned into a gale that swept through. The white snake that flew from the sky and covered the sky in front of it was blown by the cold air in an instant, frozen there, and turned into white waves. Call. Breathing out a breath, Aokiji landed on the top of the wave, looking down at the pink-feathered man below, and spoke lightly. You're a little too complacent. Brother Doflamingo. The latter narrowed his eyes and grinned. Then come, let's see who will win the final victory in this war. His hands were open and pointed sharply forward. Look at these fellows of mine. They will soon show their powerful strength. Marine, why should you resist? His eyes glanced to where Crocodile was, and Aokiji followed his line of sight, his pupils shrunk. At this moment, Crocodile was running in the direction of Fire Fist Ace and Luffy, but in the blink of an eye, he was surrounded by hundreds of Marines. Crocodile, how dare you come back here? Vice Admiral, headed by him, shouted loudly. When did the miscellaneous soldiers have the qualifications to speak in front of me? Breathing out the smoke, Crocodile said lightly. You are too arrogant. Take him. Vice Admiral's expression changed and he shouted. The former Shichibukai who was abolished, he did not take it seriously. However, in the next second, boom, the dust suddenly exploded, with Crocodile as the center, it rolled backwards and shot into the sky, rushing out of the sand sea that was 1,000 meters long, and crashed down again, surging towards the Marines in front of him. It's a very stupid thing to look at others with static eyes. With a cigar in his mouth, Crocodile stood there and said lightly. Looking down at Marine, who was struggling in the sandy sea, his outstretched right hand suddenly shook. Sand waterfall burial. Buzz. The grains of sand suddenly compressed, and with a puff, hundreds of Marines froze, only showing above their necks, bright red blood blooming on the surface of the grains of sand like plum blossoms. Chapter 199 I bet he won't last long. Hiss. A gasp sounded, and the space surrounding Crocodile became silent for a moment. Shock, incredible, and a little bit of fear spread quietly. Looking at Marine's head floating like a fish on the sandy sea, everyone trembled at this moment. How come? Is he Crocodile? To create such a desert on the ice that has been frozen by Aokiji Admiral, it can also kill hundreds of Marine elites in an instant, including 2 or 3 Vice Admiral. The Marines were shocked and heavy. No one could have imagined that the Sand Crocodile, who was defeated by the Straw Hat Boy Luffy and captured in Impel Down before, would have such incredible power. Even Sengoku was startled at this moment, and turned his head to look here. When he saw hundreds of heads in the desert, dotted with blood-colored plum blossoms, his pupils shrank, and he roared angrily almost instantly. Crocodile. The golden Buddha light bloomed at this moment, followed by the majestic Buddha sound that filled the air. Buddha Sengoku, finally dispatched. Oh, hearing the movement, Crocodile raised his head, and his pupils shrank when he saw that it was Marshal Sengoku. But there was not much nervousness, but he slowly raised his right hand and aimed it at the sky. Buzz. As the huge golden Buddha body of Sengoku descended, the terrifying and heavy pressure suddenly enveloped, causing the air to hum and fluctuate. Sand shield. The faint words were uttered, and Crocodile's right hand shook. Shish. In an instant, large tracts of sand emerged and rushed into the sky at a very fast speed, forming a huge shield that blocked Sengoku's face. Shockwave. It was also at this time that Sengoku's Buddha's palm was severely imprinted. Boom. A huge shock wave bombarded the sand shield, and in the blink of an eye, sand particles flew out from the sky, and with a click, it was compressed countless times, and the sand shield, which was far harder than steel, actually shattered. Seeing the golden Buddha light breaking through the sand shield, Crocodile's pupils shrank slightly at this moment, and his face became solemn. But at this moment, the roar resounded again. Jia ha 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 ha. Your opponent is me, Sengoku. We haven't played against each other for nearly 20 years. The loud laughter sounded, followed by a violent, domineering breath that shocked the air. The dancing blonde figure stopped directly in front of the huge Buddha palm, and swung out the long knife in his right hand. Call out. Advertisement. Boom. The Buddha's palm collided with the long knife, and the void was shaking at this moment, and the ripples and rays of light burst into bloom. But Sengoku's attack was completely intercepted, and it was firmly blocked from the long sword. Hey, he's my opponent. Crocodile raised his head, looked at the golden lion's exit and shouted. Jia ha 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 ha, boy, we've known each other for a long time. You better finish your task first. Golden Lion laughed. Humph. Crocodile snorted coldly, looking at Sengoku, whose whole body was shining with Buddha light, and his face was serious, his right hand hooked. I have to hit back too. In the next second, the thousands of sand grains above the ice surface vibrated at this moment, rushing high into the sky and turning into countless sharp sand swords. Sha Jianyu. But just as he uttered the three words lightly, Crocodile's eyes suddenly changed, and his figure suddenly jumped to the side. In its original position, an explosion sounded loudly. I saw Garp with a Chinese character face, wearing a marine suit, and a serious face, punching there. Garp Vice Admiral. Crocodile's pupils contracted, and he said in a deep voice. Then, he saw the opponent's punch on the ice, which shattered the ice cubes around thousands of meters. Such power is comparable to Zhang Lu's violent state. Garp Vice Admiral, also shot. At this moment, all Marines were excited and shouted excitedly. Boy, Naval Headquarters, it's not a place for a guy like you to run wild. Garp fixed his eyes on Crocodile and said coldly. Hey, my mission is to rescue your grandson. Is Garp Vice Admiral going to stop me too? Crocodile's eyes flashed, and he laughed. This sentence silenced Garp, but after 2 breaths, his eyes suddenly burst into flames, and his figure suddenly flashed. Gone. Crocodile was startled, and his pupils suddenly contracted. He immediately realized that the speed of the other party had exceeded the range that his naked eyes could capture, and he was about to start seeing and hearing. Boom. The majestic force had already swept in, smashing heavily on his right cheek, causing his expression to distort at this moment. So fast. Advertisement. Only 2 words flashed in my heart. Crocodile was punched into the distance. Lousy as Marine. Garp roared the Crocodile with 1 punch. Then, they turned their heads and looked at the blonde dancing figure in the air, their eyes became dignified. Shiki, you can't stand loneliness anymore. It's a good choice to hide in the sewers like a mouse and spend the rest of your life peacefully like that. But he has to play again. Golden Lion Shiki also sensed the powerful aura behind him, he suddenly exerted force, and with a knife, Sengoku was thrown into the air, and his body was separated and floated in the air. Looking at the 2 figures in front of him, the corner of his mouth suddenly grinned and he laughed. Gia ha 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 ha. That's how it looks. 20 years ago, the 3 of you and I were here, and we fought a battle. Reminds me of a wonderful past. Shiki said with a laugh. Garp, the wound on his head, and his legs. Suddenly, Sengoku shouted. Garp's heart skipped a beat, looking at Golden Lion Shiki's legs and head. It's all recovered. Also, his current state is not as old as I thought. Sengoku fell down and stood beside Garp, the 2 exchanged glances, both solemn. What the hell did he go through? The broken legs, the heavy damage on the top of the head, can be recovered. This reminds me of the guy who will recover no matter how many injuries he gets. Looks like he did it. Golden Lion naturally heard the conversation between the 2, and he didn't care, just laughed. Do you want the 2 of you to join forces against me again? But, are you sure that the junior in Marine can handle Zhang Lu? Having said that, Golden Lion pulled out another long knife with his left hand. I bet he won't last long. Meanwhile, on the other side of the battlefield. The hot magma sank and collapsed, and the long knife directly cut through Akainu's chest, pulling out a gap, and a sharp slash shot out from the blade at this time, hitting it hard again. Boom. Akainu's expression changed suddenly, and he flew towards the rear. You are still too young. Sakazuki. Zhang Lu maintained his knife-wielding posture, his eyes were sharp, and he uttered lightly. Chapter 200. You are so noisy. Chi. The snow and ice melted quickly, and a large mist emerged. Akainu's body quickly swept across the ice surface, and the sharp slashes attacked his body all the time. Boom. After a few breaths, there was an explosion, and Akainu's figure disappeared into the white mist. Gu dong dong. The magma burst into hot bubbles, dripping on the ice, and instantly a large white mist burned. Zhang Lu, 20 years later, you still have this arrogant attitude, do you think you are invincible? The magma reassembled into a human shape, and Akainu, who forcibly stagnant his body from the ice, raised his head, and his eyes were already cold and cold. Half of his body was turned into magma at this moment, and the white mist on his side rose continuously, covering the sky behind him. But it can be seen that he suffered no injuries from Zhang Lu's attack. This is Naval Headquarters, Marineford. It's Marines' territory, not a place where a self-righteous traitor like you, with a group of miscellaneous soldiers, can be arrogant. The words were cold, and Akainu's eyes were spitting fire. New hatred and old hatred can be resolved at this moment. For him, it is undoubtedly the most perfect, and it can make him feel a kind of excitement from the heart. Defeat an old Whitebeard who was only 1 step away from entering the coffin, it seems that you are extremely inflated. Stepping with both feet, Akainu raised his right hand, aimed at Zhang Lu in front of him, and opened his mouth. In the next second, countless meteor-like magma meteorites were ejected from its hands, and the scorching high temperature erupted in an instant, passing through the void, causing the temperature in the air to rise. Shish. In an instant, countless red meteors drew parabolas, whizzed through the air, and came to Zhang Lu. The latter's eyes narrowed slightly, and the long knife in his hand was waving again and again. Boom boom boom. 4 magma meteorites were split open in a row, but at the same time, the splash of magma also infected his arm, and a piece of flesh and blood was immediately burned. Wrinkling his brows, Zhang Lu stepped back, his movements were very decisive, and he slashed the flesh with a wave of the long knife. Although the old man Whitebeard is old, he still has strength. How much stamina do you have left after fighting with him? Akainu's voice came again. While the white cloak of justice fluttered, his body was already standing in front of Zhonglu, and he punched him without any fancy. Boom. The magma splashed, and the majestic force surged. Zhonglu's eyes narrowed, and his body was actually shaken to the back. Remember the last time we played against each other? That's not even a warm-up. Advertisement. You underestimate me as a Marine Admiral. You, who used to be the strongest in combat, should be very clear that such a position is not a weak guy, anyone can take office. Akainu's steps, movements, and speed are all crisp and fast. There is no doubt that at this moment, he is facing head-to-head, showing his true strength, rather than a superficial temptation confrontation. Take action at this moment, with stern killing intent. Almost in the blink of an eye, Akainu was in front of Zhonglu again, raising his right fist. Dark Hound. Zhonglu's eyes flashed and he grinned. It's really shameless. The long knife in his hand hummed and vibrated, emission hockey covered the blade, and then his eyes widened, the domineering hockey shook the void and wrapped around the long knife. God avoid. He waved his right hand, a flash of lightning flashed, and the pierced Akainu narrowed his eyes. Boom. This knife slashed Akainu's body without hindrance. Even elementalization could not be avoided, and the bright red blood splashed out, but at the same time, Akainu was also grinning. His fist also hit Zhonglu's chin heavily. Chi chi chi. White smoke rose into the air, and the smell of burnt flesh filled the air. To underestimate people, but it will kill you. Akainu grinned and roared. This punch, carrying hot lava, completely burned half of Zhonglu's chin to ashes. The skin, flesh and blood disappeared in an instant, revealing the teeth and gums, which looked hideous and terrifying. Do you think you can beat me? Zhonglu, Akainu yelled. The other party has always been aloof, disdainful, looking down, and the attitude has deeply pierced his heart. The fiasco 20 years ago has never been forgotten by him. It was the shame of a lifetime, the worst defeat, and the shadow left in my heart. And at this moment, this battle is an opportunity for him to wash away the shame and completely remove the shadow shrouded in his heart. Call, muddy breath, spit out from the gap between the teeth, accompanied by the flesh that was burned to ashes. Zhonglu stared at each other, his eyes became calm and cold. Faintly, a strong, icy, palpitating aura rose up. The long knife in his right hand shook and pulled out from Akainu's body, and a blood-colored trace appeared, but the other party also kept silent, as if the long knife was not on his body. Advertisement. Shish. The sword light shone, and Zhonglu lifted it into the air. Akainu's eyes narrowed slightly, feeling the changing aura of the other party. Suddenly, the long knife cut through the void, and it reached the top of his head in an instant, causing his pupils to shrink. Boom. The air waves rolled, and ripples spread to all directions, disturbing the white mist. The two hands that turned into magma tightly held the long knife that was swung down. I remember you, the strongest as physique, Zhonglu. In the battle with Whitebeard, has your physical strength been exhausted to the point where you can only take the next best thing, and rely on external forces? Akainu grinned, and suddenly, his eyes widened. With the strength of both hands, the long knife in Zhonglu's right hand shook, but it was directly pulled by him and threw it to the side. I can't hold the knife anymore, how can you fight me? Zhonglu. A sarcastic smile appeared on Akainu's face, and his words were unusually harsh. Boom. Visible to the naked eye, a crazy rabid dog emerged from the magma, roaring, and opened its bloody mouth towards Zhonglu. Leave the long knife out of your hands. Zhonglu just stood there quietly, the wind blew, and only the remaining robes were fluttering and swaying. Call. Akainu's voice is still coming out, his right hand is slowly raised, and the lava is surging. Behind him, the violent fighting spirit shot straight into the sky like wolf smoke. Then, Akainu punched. The faint words came into his ears, and Akainu's face changed greatly. The man who was close at hand, the chin that disappeared, returned to its original state at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the scorched black marks on his body also dissipated in the blink of an eye. You are so noisy. A seemingly ordinary fist passed through the magma and held his wrist firmly, with such a mighty force that he couldn't even move any further. Walking with Whitebeard, buried in the confidence of your heart, the new age to come. But in the next second, his pupils contracted, and the fist he threw stopped, stopping in the void. Like a dog that doesn't bite. Exhausted. His teeth were white and his chin disappeared. From a distance, it looked like a part of his head, with only his nose left, which looked terrifying and gloomy. If you are like this, just wait to die in peace. Chapter 201. Who will die here? You look like this. It matches your code name, Sakazuki. Zhonglu's voice was cold, accompanied by the terrifying fighting spirit behind him shaking the void, which also attracted the attention of everyone on the battlefield. Such a terrifying aura, they had just seen it not long ago. Bluff. I can't believe that you have experienced such a battle, and you can still maintain your peak combat power. Akainu roared, and his aura suddenly rose. Gu dong dong. Great eruption. A large piece of magma was splashing towards Zhonglu and drowned. The scorching high temperature quickly melted the ice surface under the feet, turning it into a liquid, followed by an instant vaporization. At such a close distance, such an attack is simply difficult to avoid. Zhonglu didn't dodge either. In an instant, flames burst into flames on his body, and his flesh was scorched, but the next second, he quickly recovered. The opponent's sudden outburst made him have no choice but to let go of his right hand, but soon, it was clenched into a fist. My physical strength is indeed exhausted, and there is not much left. A faint voice came out, and the gust of wind swept through, blowing away the transpiring white mist in front of him, and his body suddenly disappeared. Gone. Akainu's pupils contracted, looking for the other person's figure. But it's more than enough to deal with you. The cold, sensible words suddenly came from behind, causing Akainu's entire body to freeze. A big hand had already pressed on his head. Immediately afterwards, Akainu felt a terrifying force rolling in, as if a mountain fell on his head, causing his body to tilt and lose his balance. Boom. The strong impact caused his head to vibrate violently. Venus shot up in front of him, and even his consciousness dissipated for a moment. Then, his eyes saw the blue ice surface and made contact with it fiercely. In front of me, you have no qualifications to be arrogant. Just a loser. Sakazuki. The plain words came into his ears, causing Akainu's heart to suddenly become extremely angry, and his body was turned over almost instantly, waving his fists. Shish. The hot magma, which turned into a fist, hit Zhonglu's body with a bang, causing him to retreat one after another. Chi 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 chi. The smoke evaporated. Zhonglu's whole body was being burned by the magma, his flesh and blood evaporated into a mist. The face, chest, and abdomen were subjected to such burning attacks one after another, and they suffered extensive trauma in an instant. Akainu, one of the three admirals, is definitely not weak. The development of speed, strength, hockey, and fruit ability are all at the top level. In the original work, his life record is also proud. If it wasn't for his presence, Whitebeard would have been mortally wounded during the battle with Akainu. Although he almost died, he could not erase the fact that he was powerful. Zhonglu's battle with Whitebeard consumed a lot of physical strength and energy, which is why he summoned Yoruichi pedestrians to come here. Otherwise, with his own strength, it is indeed difficult to get out of Marineford, and he needs to pay a great price. Advertisement. Whirring. Breathing heavily, laying down on the ice, Akainu stared at Zhonglu, who was covered in smoke, grinning like a beast of laughter. Ha 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 ha. As I said, fighting against that old man Whitebeard will definitely cost you a lot. Otherwise, you won't be able to avoid even such an attack. Our victory or defeat is far from certain. Zhonglu. The white smoke suddenly shook and dissipated, revealing the tragic appearance of Zhonglu's body being burned by magma at the moment. His mutilated body even made countless people on the battlefield feel terrified. Sir. Freya even covered her mouth and cried out in a trembling voice. Zhonglu's consumption is also huge. Sengoku saw this scene and said in a deep voice. After all, his opponent is that old man. Garp also said. Golden Lion Shiki's eyes flashed and he glanced at Akainu. 20 years have passed, and the new generation of strong men in Marine has also grown up. The Magma Boy, the Frozen Boy on the other side, and the wretched middle-aged Sparkling Fruit. The three Admiral are all powerful opponents. Shiki. Next, the two of us will be your opponents. Your fate today will not be any different from 20 years ago. Lifting his head, Sengoku shouted in a deep voice. Jia ha 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 ha. Come on then, let me see whether your strength has declined over time after so many years. Golden Lion Shiki laughed. He wouldn't care about Zhonglu's side, because he knew very well that there was no need to worry about that guy's strength and means. As the outcome uncertain. You're wrong, Sakazuki. The muffled words came out, and it was visible to the naked eye that Zhonglu's mutilated body, the heavy wounds emerging from the potholes, were recovering quickly. After just 2 or 3 breaths, the injury on his body has completely recovered, and he has become that pair again, as if he had never been injured. Hiss. Unkillable monster. I finally understand why Zhonglu Admiral has this nickname. Between the battlefield, countless people gasped. Such severe and fatal injuries are enough to lose one's life. But Zhonglu recovered in a trance. This scene is shocking and unbelievable, even terrifying. They really don't know how to defeat and kill such an enemy. My consumption is really high, but as I said, Zhonglu's knees sank slightly, his right fist clenched tightly, the breath on his body is still as heavy as before, majestic as a mountain. Boom. Advertisement. The next second, his right fist swung out and hit Akainu in the face. Puff. The strength of the iron fist was astonishing, causing Akainu to tilt his head, his face twisted, and the teeth in his mouth splattered with blood. Its body swayed, and its legs stretched dozens of meters to the rear before it stopped. It's enough to deal with you. A low voice sounded, and Zhonglu stepped again. Buzz. The void shook, his figure instantly appeared in front of Akainu, his right foot lifted, and he suddenly fell. Damn it. Akainu raised his head and roared, the magma on his body surged again, turned into a column, and suddenly rushed into the sky, engulfing Zhonglu in the blink of an eye. But in the next second, his expression froze again. A shadow appeared behind him. Tempest kick, slash wave. The terrifying slash instantly hit his waist, knocking his body thousands of meters away, and blood splashed in the air. Ah 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 ah. Akainu screamed, a deep wound was cut in his waist, and even both kidneys were cut open. But even though he was hit so hard, he still clenched his teeth sharply, turned around and yelled, and punched Zhonglu, who was chasing after him. Bang 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 bang. A series of lava slammed into Zhonglu's body, leaving holes in his body, burning his flesh and emitting smoke. You're about to kill me. Sakazuki. Akainu roared, raised his right fist high, and swung it towards the opponent's left face. After a bang, Zhonglu's left cheek was burnt to ashes and looked empty. It's useless to me. However, What shocked Akainu was that, in the face of his injuries, Zhonglu didn't care about his injuries, strode forward to him, stretched out his big hand, and wrapped his head around him. The next second, the fist pierced through the abdomen and came out through the body. Akainu raised his head and howled miserably, and a blood hole appeared on his body. But you have to work harder. Boom. Why don't we guess? Roar. The indifferent words came into his ears, and Akainu's heart shook violently. You should be the one who died. You attack so desperately. Zhonglu grinned grimly. Otherwise, never die. Zhonglu, between you and me, who will die here? Chapter 202. The hot magma is swaying, and strong emotions are stirred at this moment. An angry roar, with the white mist evaporated into the air, diffused in the sky of Marineford. Boom. A little spark suddenly burst out, followed by surging magma, which converged and derived from Akainu's right fist at this moment. Gu dong dong. In just 1 or 2 breaths, a large swath of magma appeared in the air, and the temperature suddenly rose at this moment. Great eruption. The roar sounded, the magma gathered violently, took shape, turned into a huge fist, and slammed towards Zhonglu. Boom. The sky above his head has become gloomy at this moment, the gray-black volcanic ash, fluttering to the sky, the rolling flames, transpiring large waves of air on the surface of the magma. At this moment, half of his cheeks were empty. Zhonglu, his eyes flashed, his figure suddenly retreated, and in the blink of an eye, he was already thousands of meters away. What? With a loud shout, his waist bent, his hands suddenly inserted into the ice surface under his feet, and then 2 hands grabbed the ice surface under his feet and lifted it with force. Crack. There were clear cracks on the ice surface with a radius of several thousand meters, and then with a buzzing sound, it was forcibly lifted up and shrouded in the huge magma fist in front. Chi chi chi. The 2 sides collided quickly, and the hot magma collided with the huge ice block, which quickly melted and vaporized, and a large white mist emerged. Zhonglu, let's see today, between you and me, whose life is harder. Akainu roared, his eyes were cold, angry, and cold. Under the fierce battle, it has not been long since the 2 started fighting, but he has already suffered heavy damage. The magma surged, filling the hollow area of the abdomen quickly, replacing the original organs and continuing to operate. Logia's unique elementalization will always take effect in front of this man, and he will also be injured. Blood oozes from the corners of his mouth, and Akainu has embarrassment on his cheeks. But even in such a state, his state is still the pinnacle. The right fist swung violently again, more violently, and the bursting magma spurted out, engulfing the huge ice block that Zhonglu lifted up in the blink of an eye. Gu dong dong. In the magma, the flame bubbles agitated, and the sky filled the sky in an instant, turning into a huge fist and arm. From a distance, it was as if the god of magma stretched out his arm. Zhonglu raised his head and stared at the huge arm in the sky, his eyes narrowed slightly. Advertisement. I have to say, Sakazuki's strength is still very strong. Willpower, endurance, strength, speed, hockey, and comprehensive strength have all reached an amazing level. In the battle with Whitebeard, his consumption was very high, the 8 gate was fully open, and even if he had the ability to restore fruit, the consumption of physical strength and energy increased exponentially. Even if the time is longer, it will cause damage to his vitality. In the current state, it is indeed a bit troublesome to deal with Akainu, who is fighting at the peak, and is still a desperate opponent. Trouble. But it's just some trouble. Zhonglu's eyes flashed and he grinned. I love a challenge. If you are alone, you can't step on it. Then what am I talking about standing above this world? Reshaping the rules of the world. Muttering, Zhonglu took a step forward, and the fighting spirit behind him became more surging and majestic. A flash of excitement flashed across his eyes. Is it harder than life? Then see, who can stand to the end and live to the end? Suddenly, the huge magma arm in the sky shook violently, giving birth to countless mist ripples, halos, followed by the burning magma, piercing the air, like cannonballs, whistling and falling to the ground. Shish. An innumerable amount of magma bombs flew towards Zhonglu at this moment, which also alarmed everyone on the battlefield. This shocking scene is like a scene where thousands of artillery fire in unison, and its destructive power is also obvious. When the magma bombs got closer and closer, Zhonglu could see clearly that they were clearly fist-shaped magma. Overwhelming, dense, thousands, blocking every possible space to avoid. Call. Slowly exhaling, Zhonglu's knees sank, and his eyes became sharp in an instant. Suddenly, its figure moved, there was a buzzing sound, the air vibrated, and it rose into the sky. Boom. The first explosion came out, the magma turned into sparks, and quickly dissipated in the air, followed by the second and third. Boom 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 boom. A series of explosions sounded in the sky, and large swaths of Mars bloomed, as if turning into countless fireworks, making the entire Marineford beautiful. Zhonglu's figure almost turned into a phantom, flying through the void, and one after another, magma shells were scattered into sparks in the sky. After a few breaths, its figure has reached the sky above Akainu. Advertisement. Call out. After a slight pause, Zhonglu swooped down, his right fist clenched even more at this moment, conquerors, armed color, and hockey all wrapped up. One of his cheeks was still empty, looking tragic, hideous and terrifying. But it has no effect on any of his actions, as if the whole person has forgotten the pain. Roar. Seeing Zhonglu swooping down, Akainu raised his head and let out a roar. Hoo-hoo. The gust of wind rolled down, like a sharp slash, slashing on his body, causing his body to splash a large amount of magma flames. There was a flame from the fist of the right hand, and then thousands of agitated magma particles converged in an instant, followed by the right arm, half of the body, the whole body, and finally the head. Boom. With a loud bang, a turbulent, terrifying, roaring column of magma shot out towards the sky. Like a volcanic eruption, incomparably huge energy poured into the sky at this moment. The twisted magma column, carrying a large cloud of gray smoke, headed straight for Zhang Lu. At its tip, Akainu's twisted and transformed face can be clearly seen, along with the waving fist. After 2 breaths, the 2 rapidly impacting figures collided fiercely. Boom. The air pressure was suddenly disturbed, and the twisted ripples radiated toward the surroundings, and then the magma that shot up into the sky turned into a ring and hung in the sky. Roar. Zhang Lu, do you think you are invincible? Akainu roared, and his fists kept throwing out. Similarly, Zhang Lu's 2 fists are also attacking violently. Boom boom boom. In just an instant, there were dozens or hundreds of collisions, and the sound of the vibrations could not keep up with the speed of the 2 fists. Boom. Suddenly, Zhang Lu tilted his head, his brow was hit, and his forehead was shattered. His expression remained the same, and his punch was also severely hammered, hitting Akainu on the nose. Crack. The bridge of his nose collapsed, and his nose was embedded in his face, turning into a pool of blood. Ooh, I am going to kill you. Akainu screamed in pain and screamed. Chapter 203 Downwind. Like a magma column reaching the sky, twisting and rushing towards the sky. High in the sky, the 2 figures were fighting each other fiercely. Yes, for the 2 of them, this battle can be described as a mutual fight. As if they had abandoned all combat skills and forgotten all combat skills, they were carrying out the most arrogant, brutal, and direct means of attack. Waving fists, roaring at the opponent's deadly place, launching the strongest attack in anger. Boom. Zhang Lu's chest was hit by a fist of magma, and a pothole was immediately burned. Fortunately, the depth was not enough, but he could already see his beating heart. This punch can be called deadly, and it is not far from death when placed on ordinary people. But the expression on Zhang Lu's face didn't change at all, and after a while, he threw his fist again. At the edge of the hole in his chest, the blood-colored silk threads quickly shot out, intertwined, and turned into flesh, cells, and skin, which were refilled and restored. Next second, boom, his fist smashed hard on the opponent's head, and with a click, Akainu's skull shattered, and a white substance flew out. Then, there was blood. Gu dong dong. The magma followed closely behind, covering the head, pressing down the fatal wound, and Akainu roared. Pain. It hurts so much. He is not Zhang Lu, and he has no fighting spirit, so he can't shield this deep pain. At this moment, the madness completely overwhelmed the rationality, and he was going to throw a punch, and he was going to do everything to kill the man who was damn it in front of him. Bang 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 bang. The fists of the 2 people are almost swapping at this moment. You punch me, I punch you, and wounds keep appearing on their bodies. After a while, their figures began to change and landed on the ice. The column-shaped magma, like a volcano, erupted from the sky, fell down, and spread in all directions, causing other people on the battlefield to burst into exclamations. It's like 2 beasts, biting, desperately. It's too ferocious, the battle between these 2 people. Zhang Lu, this man is simply the craziest beast. After fighting Whitebeard, the strongest man in the world, he can still fight Akainu like this. Such a fight is not good for Akainu. Zhang Lu's injuries are constantly recovering. Marine, the pirates spoke solemnly at this moment. Boom. Suddenly, an explosion sounded, and they turned to look. Akainu, who was burning with magma, was smashed to the ground with a punch, blasting out a large hole, the hot magma splashed, and burnt black marks. Akainu, you are completely down. Advertisement. Look, Zhang Lu has lost one of his eyes, and half of his face is now empty. Could it be that it has reached its limit and cannot be recovered? Akainu's abdomen, nose, and chest were also mortally wounded. This appearance really makes people worry that they will die there in the next second. All the people who were watching the battle looked terrified at the moment. Even if the person fighting is not them, just watching the battle will still make them feel fear and tremble. Boom. In the distant battlefield, there was another explosion, which made many people's hearts skip a beat. It's Golden Lion Shiki, Marshal Sengoku, Garp Vice Admiral. Their battle has also begun. Someone shouted, trembling in their voices. On the other side of the battlefield, dust was flying, a large area of ruins collapsed, and a figure was buried. But soon, loud laughter came out, and then burst into the sky, and there was the large piece of ruins. Gia ha 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 ha. What a job, Garp, Sengoku. Golden Lion floated in the air, blonde hair dancing wildly behind him, grinning. After raising his hand to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth, his hands shook violently. Then let's have a good fight. Lion Majesty. Govern place earth coiling. The air was suddenly shaken, and a circle of ripples spread, followed by, visible to the naked eye, Naval Headquarters Marineford. The whole ground was shaking, the ground for thousands of meters, twisted and floated, turning into a huge lion. Majestic, 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 majestic. The huge lion stood up, nearly 100 meters long, like a huge giant standing, roaring up to the sky. Best, don't let me down. Sengoku, Garp. Golden Lion grinned, his hands trembling with 5 fingers. Roar. The roar of the lion shook the sky, and the huge earth lion stepped forward and ran towards the 2 of them. Is that the Golden Lion? One of the 3 legends alongside Roger and Whitebeard. It's terrifying, such a powerful attack, it's like a monster. But he is facing Marshal Sengoku and Garp Vice Admiral. If it is them, even if it is Golden Lion Shiki, there is no certainty of victory, right? Intensive discussions sounded, and many people were watching this battle. Meanwhile, the other side. Advertisement. The dazzling light shone up, penetrated the void, and shot forward. On the opposite side, the blue arc flashes and winds its way. In the blink of an eye, the light collides with the electric light. Boom. The sound of the explosion came out, and the void fluctuations distorted. It's very difficult to deal with. Young people nowadays, one by one, are really terrifying. A flash of light flashed on Kizaru's sunglasses, shaking his head and sighing. Old guy, your strength is not bad. If you are willing to worship this god, I can give you a chance. Enel said coldly, pointing the golden stick in his hand. It's scary, but it's also arrogant. Kizaru shook his head, leaning forward, pulling into a beam of light. The light shone in the void, and almost instantly, in front of Enel, there was already a ray of light, and a foot emerged. You are electricity, I am light. Then, let's compare the speed. A faint voice sounded, and Kizaru's right foot kicked down hard. This god also has this intention. Enel grinned, and on the long stick in his hand, the electric light flickered, and suddenly stabbed to the top of his head. Boom. Light and electricity collided, sending out endless sparks and electric currents. After a slight pause, the two flickered again, changed positions, and collided again at another place. Boom 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 boom. Light and electricity collided, flickered, and intertwined. One was golden, and the other was blue. At this moment, they all turned into lines and collided continuously. Every time it hits, the aftermath falls on the ground, and a large amount of flame and electric current will explode. Another corner of the battlefield. Portgas d'Ace. Do not worry. Slowly exhaling a puff of smoke, Crocodile stared at the two nervous and alert brothers in front of him, showing a self-kind smile. I came to pick you up on Zhang Lu's order and rescue you. Ace's eyes narrowed and he looked to the other side. When he saw the figures of the two fighting clearly, he was stunned again and froze there. Crocodile also shifted his gaze, and after a while, the corners of his mouth curved into an arc. It seems that his battle is almost over. Chapter 204 Another Ice Abyss. Chi. The hot magma dripped onto the ice, instantly vaporizing a large piece of ice. Even a block of ice as hard as steel could not resist Akainu's magma for a breath of time. Naval headquarters, with 3 very powerful admiral. In this era, they have a very high prestige and deterrent power. For pirates, they are like Shura, an existence that cannot be competed. Akainu, Kizaru, Aokiji. The names that represent the 3 are heavy, both for marine and for pirates. But at this moment, Akainu, one of the 3 admirals, was caught by the figure in the field, holding his neck in one hand and holding it in the air. The wind blew, and the tattered robe of the figure was shaking, and the white mist around his feet was also distorted. Finished. The battle between Zhang Lu and Akainu is going to be decided. Their bodies are so tragic that it makes people tremble. Many pairs of eyes stared at the 2 figures in the field and said in a trembling voice. Yes, the bodies of both of them looked extremely tragic at the moment. Akainu's abdomen was punched through a hole, and the blood on his cheeks was blurred. Nostrils, eyes, and mouth seemed to have been wiped away, leaving only blood-colored flesh. And half of Zhang Lu's face has disappeared, standing on the side, you can even see the bloody flesh and blood. On his body, there are also potholes burned by magma, which have become tattered. However, what is even more terrifying is that both of them are still alive. This can't help shocking others, sighing, how tenacious their vitality is. It seems that my life is harder. Sakazuki. Zhang Lu raised his head, only half of his face remained, the corners of his mouth grinned, and he made a cold voice. Cuckoo cuckoo. Akainu also opened his mouth, but uttered an inaudible jumble of syllables. He wanted to struggle with all his strength, but the frantic, desperate fight just now made him suffer heavy losses. But he doesn't have the terrifying resilience like Zhang Lu. That is to say, with the increase of time and trauma, the injuries on his body will only increase and become heavier. When he reached a certain point, he finally couldn't hold it anymore, and was punched into the ice by the opponent. It was like the last grass that overwhelmed the camel, overwhelming him completely. 20 years, you've really come a long way. But it's still a puddle of mud. A faint voice came out, scattered in the air, and swirled to the sky with the flying ice chips. Tick. Advertisement. The magma dripped onto the ice and burned into a mist. It took me a lot of energy, but that's it. The battle between you and me. Zhang Lu said lightly, holding the opponent's neck with his right hand and throwing it into the sky suddenly. Call. Akainu's body was thrown into the air, his eyes were fluctuating, because his mouth and teeth were all smoothed out, and he let out a strange roar. He wanted to struggle, but to no avail. When it reaches the highest point, its body begins to fall. At the same time, Zhang Lu's knees sank slightly, and his right fist was slowly clenched. Boom. In the air, there seemed to be some tiny ripples appearing, and a halo of light was suspended and wrapped around his fist, but soon, it dissipated like smoke and disappeared. But this scene, Akainu, who just fell in front of him, saw it, his pupils contracted, shocked, puzzled, and full of doubts. Next second, Zhang Lu punched Akainu's abdomen hard. Crack. A crack like a spider's web spread around Akainu's abdomen centered on it. Almost instantly, his body bent like a shrimp, arched back, and spewed a large amount of blood from his mouth. Jang Lu continued to throw his fists. His fists took Akainu's body and waved them towards the ice surface in front of him. Just use this punch and pay tribute to Newgate who fell in this battle. Akainu's eyes widened, never feeling that he was so close to death. With a bang, he heard countless cracks. He keenly sensed that everything around him was shaking and shattering. Then, a huge ice abyss appeared, and Akainu fell. This is the punch you should have suffered. Standing on the edge of the ice abyss, looking down, Jang Lu said lightly. The battlefield was silent. Sakazuki lost. Why is Jang Lu's punch so similar to Whitebeard? He pushed the inner bay into another ice abyss. First the strongest man in the world, Whitebeard Edward Newgate, and then Akainu Sakazuki, one of Marine's 3 admirals. This man, in one day, lost 2 men standing at the top of the world in a row. How strong is he? Advertisement. Damn, who can stop him? The Marines were trembling in their hearts at this moment. They had never imagined that it would be such a huge pressure to face this man instead. Whether fighting with Whitebeard or with Akainu, Jang Lu's tactics are extremely tragic, and it seems that he is not too far from death. But this man was like someone from immune to death, and he came to life abruptly. Even at this moment, the injuries and gaps on his body are still slowly recovering. Chi. The white mist is transpiring, half of Jang Lu's face is recovering. After a few breaths, he once again stood in front of everyone intact and in front of the world. This scene shocked many people. Is it really impossible to kill? What's the secret of his body? Even a person who is capable, at this level, should have died a long time ago. Just a monster. Shocked, horrified, everyone is talking about it. Jang Lu's performance at this moment makes countless people feel incredible. Half of the head is missing, and there are countless potholes burned by magma on the body. This is just too incredible to believe. Marine fell silent for a moment, and they felt the pressure. Even if there are still a lot of troops, what role can he play in the face of such a top man in the world? In the next second, Jang Lu moved. His figure is like a cannonball, jumping high, people look up, he is backed by the sun, and it looks dazzling and shining. Boom. Then, Jang Lu landed heavily between the battlefields, shaking the ground beneath his feet with huge cracks, surrounding Marine, all flying high, screaming and vomiting blood. Marineford. After today, it will cease to exist. The faint voice came out, which also changed the color of countless Marines. Destroying the place you've been in with your own hands is really mixed feelings. With a light sigh, Jang Lu slowly raised his head and glanced in front of him, the Marines staring at him with solemn expressions and nervousness. But that's how the world is. Some will perish, and some will be reborn. War will destroy countless hopes and lives, but it will also burst out new vitality in blood and fire, and reshape the order of the world. Corruption and darkness should be buried in the coffin board underground, not standing on the heads of countless civilians and races. Be the king of the highest. Chapter 205. Are you still alive? The word spread with the wind and entered everyone's ears, causing many Marines to change color slightly at this moment. Jang Lu's name, especially in the headquarters, is still quite high. As long as they think of being an enemy of a man they once respected and even believed in, many people will feel uncomfortable in their hearts and feel that they have lost hope. Are we really going to be enemies with Jang Lu, Admiral? Why, I clearly feel that he is just the day before, I regarded him as a belief, and I want to strive to become a goal all my life. I really can't do anything to Jang Lu, Admiral. At this moment, many voices from among the Marines came out, which also caused the generals to change their colors, and their faces were ugly. Big trouble. Marines' morale, under the influence of Jang Lu, undoubtedly took a fatal blow. They can't face this former belief, peak, and really shot. Even the justice that Marine insists on is being questioned by his own people at this moment. Don't forget your identities, you are Marine. Some generals shouted loudly, trying to hold down this bad momentum. But whose justice are we seeking? Someone questioned and asked in a trembling voice. But what greeted him was a merciless slap from the superior. Don't think about it, we are now on the battlefield. If the goal is not firm, in one person's breath, life may say goodbye to you. The cold voice came out, and a vice admiral jumped out and stood in front of Jang Lu, his eyes fixed on each other, his face was solemn and serious. If I can, I really don't want to be an enemy of a guy like you. Jang Lu recognized the person and smiled lightly. Then get out of the way, Doberman. Our duty, our mission, is to take you down. Jang Lu. Doberman said in a deep voice. Then there's no way. My friends, you are still waiting for me. Jang Lu shook his head and looked into the distance. The 3 figures there were constantly colliding, and the golden lion with blonde hair had obviously fallen into a disadvantage with the cooperation of Garp and Sengoku, and he didn't know how long it could last. Crocodile has already received Ace and Luffy, but their atmosphere is obviously not right, and they are full of hostility to each other. Although my strength is not as good as you, as Vice Admiral, I will do everything in my power to stop you. Jang Lu. Doberman growled. Advertisement. When the words fell, he suddenly drew his weapon and ran wildly with great strides. Everyone, charge. Even if you do everything, stop him and create opportunities for the Marshal and Garp Vice Admiral. Hearing the words, the Marines immediately abandoned all other ideas, all drew their weapons and shouted. Yes, come on. Suddenly, thousands of Marines, who have succeeded or failed, are charging towards Jang Lu at this moment. Even though the camps are now opposed, your momentum is still worthy of my admiration. Jang Lu stepped forward and said lightly. After 3 steps, his eyes suddenly stared. Buzz. The void trembled, twisted, and had a domineering aura, rolling forward in a mighty manner, and the ice surface cracked and cracked rapidly. The high-spirited Marines were charging and running, and their footsteps were stagnant. Except for Doberman Vice Admiral, who was rushing in front, and Marine who was in the back, their eyes were white at this moment, their mouths were open, and then they all fell to the ground with a thud. But unfortunately, you can't stop me. Zhang Lu's figure flashed, and he pulled out an arc, and he was in front of Doberman. As a nostalgia for the friendship of former colleagues. Doberman swung the knife, such a voice came from his ears, and at the same time, Zhang Lu, who had been in front of him, flickered and suddenly disappeared. The speed of the other party is very fast, he can't see clearly at all, and it is difficult to perceive. This brief touch made Doberman realize that the gap between the two sides was dimensional. I'll spare your life. The voice came from behind, and Doberman was shocked, and then he felt a pain in the back of his head, fainted in front of his eyes, fell to the ground with a thud, and lost consciousness. Spike. With a neat second kill, a Vice Admiral, lost his combat effectiveness in the hands of Zhang Lu. Immediately afterwards, his figure flickered, shuttled between the battlefields, and rushed towards the place where the 3 golden lions were fighting. Wherever its figure went, a large swath of marine was swept into the sky and lost its combat effectiveness, almost invincible. Call out. Suddenly, a sharp slash roared. On the side of Zhang Lu's body, the green slash wiped his nose and rushed into the distance, bursting into the sky. I didn't expect that I would have a chance to fight with you again so quickly, Zhang Lu. An indifferent voice came, and a figure with eagle eyes ahead blocked the road with a black knife in hand. Mahawk. Advertisement. Zhang Lu narrowed his eyes slightly and said in a deep voice. This man is absolutely impossible to ignore, maybe in the previous war, he has been releasing water. But showing up and stopping him at this moment can really cause him trouble. The world's #1 throne, I said it. Eagle-eyed Mahawk clenched the black sword knight, his eyes became incomparably sharp, and there was even more burning intent to fight. I'll bring it back myself. The voice fell, and his figure suddenly sprinted towards the front. The sharp breath and the surging sword intent all bloomed at this moment. In just an instant, the distance between the two sides was shortened. Zhang Lu looked up and saw Hawkeye Mahawk jumped high, holding a black knife in both hands, and swung it down suddenly. At this moment, a figure interspersed from one side, and the long knife stopped in front of Mahawk, blocking it firmly. Since the alliance is established, then we are temporarily a faction. This man, let me help you stop it. Go do your own thing, Zhang Lu. Mahawk's knife was held firmly, and Foil Beast grinned. Are you still alive? Thank you so much then. At this moment, in front of Zhang Lu, a tall figure came with a shadow, blocking his way. What's more, whether the father is alive or dead is still a mystery. They have a reason to help Zhang Lu. The familiar voice that echoed in everyone's ears not long ago made Marco and the others puzzled and excited. Dad, are you alive or dead? It seems that you have completely lost consciousness. Zhang Lu was startled, then turned around abruptly and left the place. They don't want anything, they just hope that the man can come back and live in the world. Slowly exhaling, Zhang Lu stared at the huge figure in front of him. On the other side of the battlefield, Marco was also rapidly approaching Ace, Luffy and others. Newgate died at his hands. Mahawk stared at Beasta and said in a deep voice. But Ace was able to escape, thanks to him. Beasta's eyes were sharp. Bear. Call. As long as Ace is rescued, this action can declare victory. The only person who confuses and hurts the Whitebeard group is the man. Chapter 206 Pacifist. A tall shadow loomed over, and the cold aura of the steel itself spread quietly. The figure standing in front of Zhang Lu at the moment was Bartholomew Bear. With red light flashing in his eyes, he has completely lost the vigor of human beings and turned into a cold machine. Drip 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 drip. A rapid, dense voice sounded, followed by his eyes locked on Zhang Lu, and almost at the same moment, a laser beam shot out. Passing through the void, ripples appeared in the air, and it came to Zhang Lu in an instant. What kind of mission is it that makes you even willing to give up your own life? Muttering, Zhang Lu raised his right hand and punched the incoming laser beam with a punch. Boom. The powerful destructive laser light was immediately punched elsewhere by this punch, blasting flames all over the sky, and the shock wave swept away towards the surroundings. But you can't stop me, Bear. Zhang Lu said lightly. Now there is no time to take care of the other party's state, the more important thing is to take care of Golden Lion. Under the siege of Admiral from Garp and Sengoku, Golden Lion Shiki is still at a disadvantage even though he is strong, recovering from injuries and 10 years younger than before. Boom boom boom. The huge Earth Lion, under the attack of the two, turned into dust flying all over the sky. Immediately after, he was approached by Garp again, and he swung his iron fist again and again. Sengoku's shock wave exploded with ripples. If it goes on like this, Marineford will be completely destroyed. You can't control it now. You can see how powerful the enemy is. Even Marshal Sengoku and Garp Vice Admiral joined the battle. Marineford is destroyed and can be rebuilt, but the enemy in front of us, as Marshal Sengoku said, we have a reason to win. Some Marine shouted excitedly. This wave of war has become more intense, even crazy. Whether it's a pirate or a Marine, they've all gone crazy. The gate of justice rushed into more pirates, who roared and rushed to the battlefield. Every second, every minute, life died on this war. The pirates of the Golden Lion are here too. Our reinforcements are here, kill them, brothers. The people of the Whitebeard Pirates were also excited at this moment. Roar. The sky-shattering beast roar sounded, and as soon as they turned around, they saw the densely packed, seemingly endless beasts, staring at the red eyes, rushing towards here with a roar. Advertisement. There is no doubt that this is a grand war on an unprecedented scale. Participants involved Naval Headquarters, Shichibukai, Whitebeard Pirates, Golden Lion Pirates, and the Zai Palace under Zhang Lu. The live broadcast was broadcast to the world, and it also shocked civilians and countless forces in various countries in the world. It's really a battle of the top. I have never seen a war of such an unprecedented scale, involving a large number of strong men, in my life. I really don't know how many people will die in this war. Marineford is doomed. The people watching the war took a deep breath and said with flickering eyes, feeling agitated and nervous. But it is absolutely clear that as long as Zhang Lu finally survives this war, his name will be heard all over the world, and he will have an absolutely unprecedented prestige and fame. In this world, some people yearn for the freedom of pirates, some people admire Marine's justice and rectification, but some people deeply admire men like Zhang Lu who have the courage to break the confinement and desire to change everything. He will become their faith, will become God. Everyone in the world understands very well that the noise and influence Zhang Lu caused in the world through this war has also been associated with the chain reaction that will be caused in the future. Meanwhile, Marineford, disorganized and twisted smoke rises from all over the battlefield. The once largest and majestic fortress in the world is about to be reduced to ruins and become the most tragic battlefield in the world. Drip drip drip. In front of Zhang Lu, on the left, on the right, and behind him, there are bears everywhere. A tall, cold, bear-like machine has surrounded Zhang Lu. As this the pacifist built by the Marine Research Department, deliberately transforming the bear. Battle Peach Pill. Scanning the surrounding scene, Zhang Lu lightly looked at the man hiding in the distance with an axe in his hand. Zhang Lu Admiral, I'm just taking orders from my superiors, I don't really want to do anything to you. When Zon Taomaru was discovered, he immediately said in a trembling manner. Let him fight with this Marine's predecessor, the monster, he doesn't have the courage. Of course I know you won't shoot at me. Our relationship is very good. Zhang Lu smiled. Zon Taomaru breathed a sigh of relief, a trace of regret flashed in his eyes. Senior Zhang Lu is such a good person, why did he choose to convict Marine? Advertisement. However, I am somewhat interested in the latest scientific research successes of your Marines. Let me see their abilities. Hearing this voice, Zon Taomaru trembled, and quickly cleared himself. This is all done by that D********* D Vegapunk. These guys also obey his instructions. I can only simply order them. As soon as he finished speaking, he saw the pacifists who surrounded Zhang Lu, with red light flashing in their eyes, followed by laser light, which burst out with a bang. The speed of light is naturally extremely fast. In just a split second, these rays of light arrived in front of Zhang Lu, blocking every space for him to hide. Iron body. Zhang Lu didn't mean to dodge either, just spit out two words lightly. At this moment, the muscles and cells of his whole body suddenly tightened, and his body became as hard as steel. Call. Zhang Lu said disdainfully, his figure flickered, and successive explosions came out, but for a moment, only the real bear was left in front of him. In just an instant, he came to the front of a pacifist, kicked his right foot, and with a bang, its head was directly smashed into the body, causing smoke to rise. The next second, the explosion sounded, and the bear fell to the ground with a bang, and was pressed into the ground. With a light sigh, Zhang Lu stepped out in 3 steps, and the man was already in front of the bear. The sound of the shock came out, and Zhang Lu's figure was drowned by the firelight. Shave. Boom. Immediately after, the dense beeping sound in his ears sounded again, Zhang Lu's figure flashed, and he came to the other one again and punched. Seeing what you look like now really makes me feel an inexplicable feeling in my heart. But so, a machine is a machine after all, and without being human, the possibilities are endless. A faint voice came out, his footsteps stepped on the ground, and his figure suddenly flew out. After a long while, the breeze blew, the smoke dissipated, and his figure stepped out. Except for the clear 8-pack abs and the almost perfect strong body line, there was no trace of scars on his body. It's all rubbish. Boom. Boom. The huge pacifist had a hole punched directly from its abdomen, revealing various circuits that were flashing with electricity. Chapter 207 Saying Goodbye to Old Friends. Zhang Lu left, leaving behind a smoke of pacifists. The heart that Zon Taomaru was holding on, did not let go until this moment, and let out a long sigh. It's not that I don't obey orders, it's Zhang Lu Admiral, and he's not someone I can stop. Alas, the pacifist has become a pile of rubbish, and now Vegapunk is going to have another headache. The other side of the battlefield. Garp, grow old. At a young age, I can still have such a physique, which really surprised the old man. Golden Lion Shiki stood on the shattered ground, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and grinned as he looked at the man with Chinese characters not far ahead. Behind him, the Buddha's light flickered, and Sengoku, who was covered in gold, was staring at him aggressively. After being treated by Zhang Lu, you are no less inferior to Whitebeard. Shiki. Otherwise, it is impossible for you, who lost your 2 legs, to have the same combat power as you were 20 years ago. Garp shouted in a low voice. Jia ha 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 ha. The old man's ambition has never declined with age. Golden Lion laughed. It's better to use ambition to describe it, it's more accurate. If a guy like you is united with Jang Lu, no one knows what will happen. Do you want to be the new rocks? Sengoku yelled. Jang Lu, Golden Lion, plus Crocodile, Doflamingo, and Rob Lucci, who is currently fighting the mysterious man sent by the world government. This team, in terms of potential, may already have the strength to compete with the former rocks. Rocks. Gia ha 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 ha. Who wants to be a loser like him? We will surpass him. Sengoku, Garp. Golden Lion Shiki burst out laughing and shot out, waving both knives in his hands and charging towards Garp. Boom. In an instant, the long knife collided with Garp's iron fist, and the ripples were surging, and the shock wave spread in all directions. Sengoku roared around him and rushed over. Golden Lion Shiki shook his right foot and stomped on the ground. Boom. Advertisement. The ground rolled up in an instant, forming a solid lion-headed shield behind it. Shockwave. Sengoku slapped down with his right palm, G on the lion head shield, blasting out a large piece of dust, which was raised into the sky. Crack. The destructive power of the shock wave is beyond imagination. The shield formed in a short time cannot be defended at all, and it shatters immediately. But it was also at this moment that Golden Lion Shiki turned around and let out a long grin. 1 against 2, this is my Shiki's spirit. Damn, old Whitebeard can't see Lousy's hockey. Another long knife in his hand swung out, collided with Sengoku, another circle of ripples spread, and the ground beneath his feet collapsed and shattered. Crazy. Sengoku roared, his right hand increased his strength, and the power of the shock wave was even stronger. Shiki, why are you compared to Whitebeard? Garp also roared. Even in the hostile camp, we still respect that old man. But what about you? You're just an ambitious, brutal and domineering careerist. Golden Lion Shiki's eyes froze, and he grinned coldly. 2 old fellows, this kind of evaluation doesn't make me happy at all. He suddenly exerted force with both knives, and the powerful force instantly knocked the 2 out and dragged them for a distance on the ground. Wait until I defeat you and sink this Marineford. In the future, you will know what kind of person I am, Golden Lion Shiki. However, in any case, it is far better than the 2 of you, who abide by the so-called hypocritical justice. The 2 knives in his hands shook and then slashed out. Slash wave. The long and narrow, sharp slash, in an instant, roared towards the 2 who were running towards him again. Boom. After a breath, Garp threw his fist, Sengoku clapped his hands, and the sharp slash was sent directly into the sky, without affecting them at all. You have no future, Shiki. Today, just stay here. Sengoku roared. The huge Buddha's body jumped high, condescending, and the Buddha's palm was shot downward. Shockwave. Garp disappeared and appeared in front of Shiki in an instant, his eyes were cold, his face was serious, and he swung down with a fist. Facing the combined attack of 2 world-class powerhouses, Shiki's pressure can be said to be enormous, his pupils shrank, and he raised his arm to block Garp's punch. Boom. Advertisement. The dull sound made the air tremble, and his body trembled even more, shifting several tens of meters laterally. When he raised his head again, what he saw was Sengoku's shock wave slapping down, glowing with golden light. Boy Jang Lu, haven't you come yet? Shiki gritted his teeth. No amount of maddening words in his mouth, but it still can't change the reality that he is besieged. Although the 2 guys are also old, their explosiveness is no less than 20 years ago. Shiki, admit defeat. Marineford, this is not your place to be wild. Sengoku's roar came from overhead. As soon as Shiki gritted his teeth, raised his arms and stood in front of him, he was ready to fight the shockwave head-on. But at this moment, a figure flashed from the corner of his eyes, pulled out a light, and instantly reached the top of his head. Be careful. Garp's face changed suddenly, and he yelled to remind him. But it was too late. Sengoku, who clapped his hands out, was startled, and a fist had already hit him on the cheek. Boom. The huge force of the blow made Sengoku's head sway, his eyes slackened for a moment, the shock wave in his hand disappeared, and the huge golden Buddha body crashed to the ground. Boom. The dust flew up, and Sengoku fell to the ground with a single blow. Golden Lion raised his head and grinned only after seeing the figure above his head. Gia ha 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 ha. You're finally here, Jang Lu. Garp also looked ugly at the moment, extremely solemn. Jang Lu. Sengoku shook his head and climbed up from the ground. There was a clear blue-purple trace on his golden cheeks, and blood was oozing from the corners of his mouth. Jang Lu. The person who suddenly arrived was Jang Lu, who fell from the air and stood beside Golden Lion, staring at the 2 in front of him, and suddenly grinned. This scene really makes people feel complicated. Sengoku's face was cold and ugly, and he said in a deep voice, what the hell are you trying to do? What do you want to do? Jang Lu raised his eyebrows, and there was some emotion in his words. Originally, I just wanted to do some righteous things, to make myself understandable, and to be a righteous marine. However, in the end, it was discovered that under this justice, there is a creepy darkness and corruption. At this time, what should we do? After a pause, his eyes stared at the 2 in front of him. You can only say goodbye to the old friends who once fought side by side. Chapter 208 Garp vs Jang Lu. The screams of killing were loud, and the war in Marineford continued. The gust of wind whistled, swept up the robes of the 4, and rolled the dust in front of them, causing the air to twist at this moment. The 4 pairs of eyes looked at each other with seriousness and solemnity. We used to be partners who fought side by side, but now we have to fight each other and fight for life and death. Jang Lu, do you really want this? Garp yelled. His mood was the most complicated at this moment. On this day, he experienced the most violent ups and downs in his life. Sun Tzu was almost executed, and although he is temporarily out of danger, he has to face the fiercest war. Garp, you should be the one who understands me the most, aren't you? If you want to save Ace, there is only one choice. After a pause, Zhang Lu laughed. I'm sorry, but I don't have the heavy feelings and responsibilities you have towards Marine. I cherish the family I have more. Garp was startled when he heard this, his fists clenched. I thought you would have another way. Stop being so naive, Zhang Lu suddenly shouted angrily. In this world, there are not so many perfections, and the high-ranking people will not give you so many opportunities. He took a breath and took a step forward. Compared to your pedantic, dare not take this step, I prefer today's choice. Since war is unavoidable, let's come. 2-2 is fair enough. Zhang Lu's words made Sengoku and Garp look serious. Jia ha 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 ha. You're right, 2-2 is fair. 20 years ago, the old man fought 1 against 2. 20 years ago, this kind of battle was truly decisive. Golden Lion Shiki laughed too. Next, the four fell into silence. No one spoke again, but the atmosphere between them became more and more solemn, and tense. Whirring. The wind swept up and blew over their heads. Suddenly, for a moment, they moved. The person standing not far away suddenly changed color and roared loudly. Yes, the 4 people in the field moved at this moment, and the extreme silence suddenly turned into extreme movement. In just an instant, the 4 found their opponents. Shish. Advertisement. Their figures, spanning a distance of more than 1,000 meters, were simply a matter of an instant, and then they collided fiercely. Boom. The sound of the tremor came out, and Marineford was shaking and buzzing at this moment. Jia ha 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 ha. Sengoku, your opponent is me. Golden Lion Shiki swung his 2 knives and slashed at Sengoku's palm one after another, bursting with a series of sparks, and the aftermath of the slash shot in all directions, tearing apart buildings and the ground. Shiki, I will never let you do anything wrong here. Sengoku roared. The golden Buddha light flickered all over the body, like pouring gold, majestic and heavy, vast and majestic, and a shock wave was slapped with one palm. Buddha of Sengoku. At this moment, the super strength combat power belonging to Marshal Marine finally erupted. Although famous for the resourceful general, Sengoku's strength is also not weak, and he is a world-class powerhouse. Come on then. Jia ha 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 ha. Golden Lion Shiki laughed, stretched out his right hand, and snapped his 5 fingers. The ground beneath his feet, the air pressure in the sky, all vibrated and changed at this moment, and the invisible majestic breath hit Sengoku, causing his complexion to change, his arms in front of him. Boom. With a loud explosion, Sengoku's golden Buddha body flew backwards quickly, knocking down a dilapidated building, causing countless people to change color. Marshal Sengoku. Damn, with Zhang Lu joining the fight, Golden Lion can't completely suppress it. Naval headquarters, in danger. The Marines gritted their teeth. The battles of the 4 in the field were all world-class, and Pang Ran could not intervene at all. The 3 Admiral and Akainu were severely injured, and their life and death are now unknown, while Aokiji and Kizaru were both entangled in a fight and could not be distracted at all. Boom. At this moment, there was another explosion in the field, and people looked away. It's Garp Vice Admiral and Zhang Lu. Many people's eyes flickered and their hearts trembled at this moment. I saw that the battle between the 2 people in the field was extremely simple and direct, without any gorgeous whistles, it was a collision between physical arts. Fist to fist, knee to knee, even the movements are a little bit the same. Zhang Lu, your physical skills were taught by this old man. Garp shouted in a low voice. Boom. The fists of the 2 collided together, the air pressure was changed, the air collapsed, and ripples appeared, and the impact spread around. Advertisement. Yeah, I remember it clearly too. There is a deep friendship between you and me. Zhang Lu did not object at all, nodding and admitting. His waist twisted, his body turned, and his right foot suddenly kicked out. Garp did the same, the right feet of the 2 collided in the void, and after a slam, a strong force made them retreat quickly and widen the distance. Do you really want to destroy Marineford? Garp growled. He glanced around. The entire headquarters square was no longer what it used to be. There were cracks, gaps, ruins of collapsed buildings, and burning flames everywhere. Even the base shelf in the entire fortress was fatally damaged, which means that Marineford may be about to sink and is no longer suitable for inhabitants. Whitebeard's ability to vibrate fruit, the battles between the powerhouses, and the wide range of radiation, have changed the nature of this place. Standing on this ground, even if you don't move, you can feel the restlessness in the ground, and it will shake violently every once in a while. There are even some areas that have turned into magma, ice, and lightning. Destroy this place. Zhang Lu grinned. There is no need for me to destroy here. Its toes hit the ground, and with a buzzing sound, the figure has disappeared again. Shave. Similarly, the opposite Garp also flickered and disappeared, and the same marine passed away. The next second, the figures of the 2 emerged, and the right leg split the space and collided fiercely. Tempest kick. The same tempest kick, the same moves, even the power and destructive power seemed to be the same. Then, they flickered and appeared again. Iron fist. The fist collided with the fist, and the space shook at this moment. The attacks of these 2 people are exactly the same. The people watching the battle exclaimed in amazement. Jang Lu used to be the youngest of the Marines, his teacher was Zephyr, and Garp Vice Admiral was his elite training class instructor for a while. It can be said that there are many shadows of Zephyr Admiral and Garp Vice Admiral in Jang Lu's physical skills. That means, the person who knows him best and is most likely to defeat him is Garp Vice Admiral. That's not necessarily true. He is too young, and there are too many secrets in him. The discussion sounded at this moment, and the words were filled with solemnity. At the same time, in a certain corner of the battlefield, a group of figures stood there without knowing when, quietly observing the war. Chapter 209 The Secret Eyes. Thief ha 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 ha. A shocking and exciting scene. The whole world is a mess. At this moment, it is our time to face the world and seize everything. The loud laughter came out, and the man headed had a rough face and a tall body. Looking at the entire battlefield, his expression was excited and excited. Captain Teach is right, this scene is rare even in 100 years. Once Golden Lion Shiki vs Marine Marshal Sengoku, Day Tiger Jang Lu vs Marine Hero Garp Kazaru, Aokiji, were firmly stopped by their opponents. Wait, that guy is Shichibukai Doflamingo. I can't believe that Heavenly Yaksha has such strength. Behind Blackbeard Marshal Teach, Van Oka squinted and said in a deep voice. He realized that on this battlefield, it seemed that some things had exceeded his expectations. Help me find Dad's body. I heard that, like Pluden Rayleigh, he also died at the hands of Jang Lu. I really regret it, but it doesn't matter. When I take everything I deserve, I will avenge my father. Thief ha 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 ha. Saying that, Marshal Teach laughed again. Take action. Lafitte laughed. Their number now has a certain scale. Especially in Impel Down Under the Sea, all the criminals rescued are ruthless characters with unusual strength. With the help of these guys, it can be said without hesitation that the Blackbeard Pirates are now a pirate group that cannot be ignored. However, Blackbeard, Van Oka and the others did not notice the expressions of the prisoners and criminals behind them. That man, the man who fought Marine Hero Garp. Send this vile guy in front of us to save us. San Juan Evil Wolf's eyes flickered, his body was tall, not inferior to the giants, and even surpassed, looking down at the battlefield ahead, with a pair of eyes staring at Jang Lu. I heard he beat Whitebeard, the terrible man who killed another Marine Admiral. What a domineering man. Beside him, Abaro Pizarro was also staring at Jang Lu at this time, scanning the entire battlefield, identifying their respective forces. Advertisement. It's a villain. Ha 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 ha. Missing the whole of Marineford, what a strong man. It should be fun to follow such a guy. Then, he turned his head to look at Catherine Dipin behind him. Looks like we should have a wonderful adventure. Catherine Dipin retracted her eyes. It's a coincidence, I think so too. At this moment, Shiryu of the Rain next to him exhaled a puff of smoke and listened to the conversation of these guys, his eyes flickered, and he was keenly aware of the difference. Hey, what are you talking about? Maybe, you can take me with you. But no one paid any attention to him, just walked forward. Shiryu shrugged, his eyes fixed on the other side, the tall guy who was sneakily holding a trident. Even the deputy director has run away. This time, Impel Down is very lively.
Hope that Magellan guy, take care of yourself, hee. On the other side, in a remote corner of Marineford, there is silence here, an old man dressed in a red robe, with gray hair tied into a braid, and holding an umbrella and sword in his hand, is standing in the wind, quietly looking down at the battle below. A heartwarming and exciting battle. Do you mean to make a fuss about the world and innovate everything from now on? After a pause, Redfield smiled lightly, and the old voice came out in the wind. It's really a spectacular scene, but unfortunately, at the moment, I can't participate.
Extending his right hand, Redfield looked down at his old, wrinkled, shrunken palm and shook his head. He knew very well that with his current physical condition, he would not be able to participate in this world-class battle. It would only make people laugh, and with his pride, he could not allow such a thing to happen. I'll get my power back, and when that happens, let's meet again. Jang Lu. A gust of breeze blew past, and his old figure disappeared. Not far from Redfield, an equally old, but tall, two-horned old man looked down at the entire Marineford battlefield, with a flickering expression and a sly smile on the corner of his mouth. Advertisement. Although I owe you a favor, I don't have to pay it back right away. Jang Lu, I hope we can meet again on the sea in the future. Berndi Valdo took a deep look at the figure who was fighting fiercely with Garp again, and turned away without hesitation. Similarly, at this moment on the battlefield, there was also a tall, burly man who was full of iron and blood. I heard you defeated Pluden Rayleigh, and in this war, killed Whitebeard. After Roger, you have become my new target, Jang Lu. I'll be waiting for you in New World, looking forward to our first battle. Douglas Bullet also turned away. This battlefield is too grand, it covers a huge area, and it is extremely chaotic. The appearance of several figures, without exposing themselves, was ignored at all. He faced the declarations of the whole world, which made some people feel that they became beliefs, but at the same time, they also made some people feel harsh. Just outrageous. You really don't respect your seniors at all, it hurts me to death. This also means that even after the Marineford War is over, there will be a shocking new storm in the world in the near future. Likewise, when he punched, Garp screamed. It's a tough fight, no doubt. Garp, this punch is really merciless. This is a real injury, and even the recovery fruit can't seem to be expelled in a short time. The two faced each other, looking at each other, and they were both fierce and confrontational.
Jang Lu is too dazzling in this war, and will naturally attract the attention of countless people. There are too many ambitious and capable people in the world. Unlike Whitebeard and Akainu, Garp's iron fist hit him is a real injury, and this is where he is really strong. The friend who used to be the most familiar, the teacher, has now become the most powerful opponent. And in their mouths, they all mentioned a man, Jang Lu. Although it was not as tragic as the battle with Akainu and Whitebeard, it was painful to the bone, and he kept breathing in pain. Jang Lu ran on both feet, rushed forward, punched Garp in the cheek, and rolled him out. There were clear bruise marks on his cheeks. The old era and the new era, converging and colliding at this moment, will also bloom with endless brilliance and light in the future. At this moment, Jang Lu was completely unaware of all this, and all his thoughts were concentrated on the enemy in front of him. Chapter 210. Ace, Jang Lu is fighting Grandpa Garp. Luffy, who was still surrounded by Marine, stared at the battlefield where the smoke was constantly flying, and shouted towards Ace. I see. Luffy. Ace's eyes flickered, his face heavy. There are too many contradictions and problems in this war, and his mind is in chaos at the moment. His uncle fought with his father, and with his grandfather Garp. The problems that have arisen in the war are complex and difficult to tell. Everything that's going on there is beyond the control of the two of you. Your main goal now should be to escape Marine's encirclement. Fire Fist Ace, don't let the hard work of Whitebeard and Jang Lu go to waste. With a wave of Crocodile's hand, the grains of sand turned into long knives, repelling a group of Marines who rushed up in front of him, and said in a deep voice. The purpose of this war, it can be said is very clear, is to fire Fist Ace and destroy Marineford. Fighting against Whitebeard, changing camps in front of the whole world, and setting off such an unprecedented war, Jang Lu has a full sense of existence. It can be said that its most direct purpose is to have the greatest impact and promotion effect on future careers. No one is willing to follow. An obscure organization, a pirate or a revolutionary army, all need to achieve a certain level of reputation and status before people rush to join them. To fight against the world government, the whole world needs more troops, more powerful people, more territory and financial resources. Summit War is just the beginning, tougher things are yet to come. Damn it, how will this war end? Ace gritted his teeth and roared. Since the start of the war, both the Whitebeard Pirates and the Marine, the casualties on both sides have been increasing at an extremely fast rate. Falling down every moment is a living being. After you are rescued, the meaning of this war will naturally disappear. Everything is up to you, Crocodile said lightly. This is indeed the case. Shu Yi's goal has already been achieved. Jang Lu's combat power seems to be still at its peak, but in fact, most of his physical strength has been consumed and he is approaching the limit. To completely annihilate Garp, Sengoku, and Marine, who still has a large army, is nothing short of a fantasy. As long as Fire Fist Ace is safe, the meaning of this war has been lost. I understand. Ace took a deep breath, the flames burned on his body, and continued to run forward. Marco and the others are also striving to break through here, to join them. Advertisement. Boy Jang Lu, with your current strength, I'm afraid it's not enough to subvert the whole world. A low voice came from Garp's mouth. Hearing this, Jang Lu's eyes flashed, he threw a punch, collided with the opponent, and then withdrew his figure. Looking at each other, the two of them both had blue noses and swollen faces at the moment, looking very embarrassed. Oh, what advice do you have? He asked aloud. As strong as Roger and Whitebeard, they are all just peacefully in their domain, being the emperor among the pirates, the emperor. Why do you want to overturn the world and overturn everything that is established? Garp whispered. Both feet jumped up, and when the two faced each other again, they appeared in the air, and then their fists collided, and with a bang, the sky shook. You beat Pluton, you beat Whitebeard, so what? They're getting old too. Jang Lu's eyes flashed. It's not like you to say something like that, Garp. The old man is more sober than anyone else, and he knows the world very well. Garp rode. If you want to make a change, the first step you need to do is to go beyond. More than Roger, more than Whitebeard, more than Marine. Can you? Jang Lu grinned, his figure flickered, and he punched again. Why not? Garp raised his arm to block it, and with a bang, his body was knocked out by a powerful force. But what the old man sees is that you are now, and even the old man like me is helpless. Jang Lu's eyes narrowed and his fists clenched. Yes, how much do you know about me? Garp, the strength I showed 20 years ago. You all know it. After a pause, Jang Lu's face was calm, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. It's been 20 years. This strange-sounding remark made Garp's body tremble, and a brilliance flashed in his eyes. Sengoku, who was not far away, also raised his head suddenly, and then the golden lion Shiki, who flew up, slashed in the chest with a knife, making a bloodstain. Could it be that his strength hasn't fully shown yet? Advertisement. At this moment, Sengoku didn't care about his wounds at all, but kept his eyes on Jang Lu. 20 years ago, Jang Lu's strength had reached the level of Roger and Whitebeard. In just a few short years, he has shown the talent of penultimate, even a monster, and his strength has improved rapidly. Time flies, and now it has been 20 years. How will the opponent's strength change? No one knows this kind of thing. The next second, Jang Lu slowly raised his right hand, stretched out his index finger, and pointed at Garp. The power in me is beyond your imagination. Garp. Being pointed at by the other party's strange movement, Garp was immediately shocked. Certainly. In the next second, Zhonglu spit out a word. Buzz. In the void, a ray of light shot out in an instant, reaching Garp at a very fast speed, hitting his eyebrows in an instant. Garp. Sengoku's face changed suddenly and shouted loudly. What secrets does Zhonglu hold? Damn, what is that? At that moment, his time was frozen. Garp yelled. There was shock in his eyes, completely incomprehensible. This made Garp feel terrified, and he was keenly aware that everything around him was still. Zhonglu's punch was completely impossible to avoid. What is this? Zhonglu kid. Garp flew out, swept away thousands of meters, and fell into the headquarters building with a bang. Zhonglu's punch just now was not difficult to dodge, and he could sense that the opponent's physical strength was approaching the limit after repeated battles. Sengoku roared. At this moment, Garp, who was powerful in physical skills, stood there fixedly, as if he had been pressed the pause button, not moving at all. At the same time, Zhonglu stomped on the ground with both feet, shot out, pulled an arc, came to Garp, and threw a punch. Boom. A person, can't he only master one kind of fruit ability? But Garp just stood there strangely, motionless, and endured the punch abruptly. Although it only takes less than a second, for the strong, this moment is enough to determine the winner and loser, and even fatal. After a while, in the ruins of the headquarters building, a figure pushed away the stone and stood up staggeringly.